Oh, sorry. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. On August 22nd, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin, an Anishinaabe nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Councillor Maguire?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I propose that we remove 8.7 Confederation Bridge Report and defer it to a future meeting because of the length of the meeting tonight and the fact that CAO Morris isn't with us.
I think we have to have that as a vote, so I'm going to ask my colleagues if you're in favor of doing this, please raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I see. Okay, so Mayor Penko, did you have your hand up? Or did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm sort of fine either way, whether it's now or deferred. No
okay, so that will be deferred to our next meeting. Oh, sorry, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'm not. I think we should be talking about this tonight. I mean, CEO Morris is not here. That's not a reason to defer it. And we haven't started the meeting yet. So we have the consultants here. We have a report before us, and it's 5 o'clock. We've just started, and I'm not willing to defer it, but I'll defer to my colleagues.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor McKenna.
Just a matter of procedure, Madam Chair. Do we need a seconder? And if that was a motion, I believe we would if we're changing the agenda.
Okay, then I need a motion. Is that true? Is that right, Nadine?
So at this point in time, it's just majority support to amend the agenda. So if you confirm majority support, then we can remove it.
All right, so that will be deferred to another meeting. Our CAO Morris is away this evening, and our acting CAO is Treasurer Kazil, and I'm going to ask her to introduce staff that may be with us this afternoon. Go ahead, Janet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with us this evening, we have Director Carrie Costello, Director Paul McMunn, Julia Crowder, our Economic Development and Tourism Manager, Carl Grenke, Senior Planner, and Deputy Clerk Bennett.
Thank you. Full house. Thanks. There's no disclosure of monetary interest or no delegation. I need a motion for the adoption of minutes. Thank you, Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor McGuire. All in favor? Recommended motion that the minutes of July 11th, 2022 and August 2nd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meetings be received and filed. All in favor? Okay. Are there any, no, I should say that we have two reports this evening. The first one is with Director Costello. Director Costello, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick report this evening. I'd like to welcome Richard Grant to the Town of Smiths Falls team. He has joined us in corporate services as in the Planner 1 position. So welcome to Richard. Also would like to recognize that we have a completed additional residential unit guide. It will be going public shortly. It'll be posted on the website and it'll be made available to the public should they wish a copy. The Planning Summer Student has put that together and it was presented to the Housing Advisory Committee last week. So that will be available shortly. Quick update on the land need studies. The consultants have undertaken the stakeholder interviews and are working on projections. So that will be coming shortly, as well as the first draft of the CIP will be posted up to the Speak Up Smiths Falls platform tomorrow. And the public open house for the CIP is August 30th at 6 p.m. as a reminder to everyone. Quick update on the election front. Friday was nomination day. The certified listing of candidates is up today on our Speak Up Smiths Falls platform, as well as all social media. So notice of election will be going out tomorrow. We have a full slate of candidates. And as well, the property standards meeting has been scheduled for September 8th at 5:30. And the draft bylaws have been put on Speak Up Smiths Falls, as well as the notice of the meeting. And there's multiple ways for public engagement. So we encourage everybody to participate in that.
Thank you.
That
for
is
that.
all.
I don't see any hands up. Thank you for that, Director Costello. Our last director's report is with Manager of Economic Development and Tourism, Julia Crowder. Welcome.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I wanted to provide Council with an update on the town's current website. As you're aware, the website went down about 3 weeks ago, and it was briefly restored for a few days, then went offline again. Staff have been working with an IT professional with experience in website development, as well as our server host provider. At this time, the website is approximately 85% restored in the back end, but we're still experiencing challenges, which is a result of how the website was originally set up, the presence of malicious coding, and being that a number of licenses and certificates were never incorporated or updated by the website provider, including a security firewall, which ultimately left the website prey to the language hack that we've seen. Restoring the website has taken time. We first needed to back the entire website up, identify the cause, then work to fix the backend configuration and remove the embedded malicious coding. We're currently awaiting a response to a support ticket from the host server provider to assist with restoring the remainder of the website. And it's my hope that we can have the website back up and running in a few weeks. The RFP for the development of the new website has closed, and staff will bring a report forward with recommendations for a new provider through a report later on this evening. We continue to provide information to the public through our regular communication channels, including Speak Up Smiths Falls.
Councillor McGuire, go ahead, have a question, comment.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Julia. Will there be any reduction in the fees that we pay for maintenance this year if this is a result of the maintenance not being performed?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in speaking with our current host, they actually stopped taking the fees. That's part of the reason why some things weren't being updated. They felt that they could no longer support us and kind of ended the contract. Although we did ask them to continue on with us until the new website could be updated, but since that time, it wasn't working out. And so we just decided to move on and find someone else who can help us with the website until a new one is provided.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the update, Julia. Thanks very much. We have one correspondence item this afternoon, and that's from the Brantford City Council. And it's about a potential threat to residential home ownership. And they feel that the rising cost of housing is caused by money laundering through the purchase of residential real estate. Is there any interest in moving that forward for us? Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd move that we receive it for information at this time, and that'd be that.
That sounds good. Thanks very much. Can I have a seconder to have it for just information? Councillor Brennan, thank you. Moving on to our priority issues, we have quite a few this afternoon. Priority issue 8.1 is a comprehensive zoning bylaw update report 2022-122 with Senior Planner Grenke. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Council and the folks who are watching the meeting at home. I'd like to, I'm pleased to present Council with a draft zoning bylaw, comprehensive zoning bylaw for Council's consideration and potential adoption. And also, I'd like to express my my welcome to WSP consultants, Nadia DeSanti and Jill McDonald, who will be presenting in just a moment, covering and summarizing the bylaw. So the draft bylaw that's before you is the product of many months of consultation with property owners. This includes statutory and non-statutory outreach, including notification of those property owners whose properties are proposed to be zoned through the process. And the report also outlines some of the significant changes to the policies, as well as a summary of the feedback and discussion at the several times that this was presented to the Planning Advisory Committee. And certainly I'd like to thank the work of the Planning Advisory Committee in being a very helpful sounding board and providing feedback and direction on a number of the policies that are being presented here this evening. So at this point, there is a presentation that has been prepared by our consultants, and I'd like to welcome Nadia and Jill, who will be presenting.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of Committee of the Whole. And yes, I am accompanied by my colleague, McDonald, who will be advancing the presentation and the slides. So my name is Nadia DeSanti. I am a practice lead with WSP and project manager for this very important project for the town and the community. I do want to say that we have also been working with CGIS, who's prepared the schedules, and so they are part of our team and have been great to work with. Just before we head into the presentation, I just want to mention that there's been a few last minute minor edits that we will be making today on the bylaw. And so I just want to convey that since the version that has been in your packages, there will be a couple of text edits, and these will include any holding provisions. So wherever you see an H, any holding provisions that have been listed, that has been removed from the text. We will also be including the zoning exceptions for 188 Chambers and 4040 McGill Street South. So we will be adding those. And one exception zone was intended to be retained, was inadvertently deleted from the text. And so that has been re-added, and that's 42 William Street West. And the zoning for that property is R3-X. And a couple of tweaks on the schedule. So we've just ensured that the site-specific zoning reflects property parcel fabric. Again, sometimes the line work of the zone and the property fabric can be a bit off, so we've corrected that. And then any changes that have been made to the bylaw text that I just mentioned will also be reflected on the zoning schedule. So I just wanted to present those edits. So as Carl mentioned, PAC has been extremely supportive and helpful, as well as the public comments that we've received to date. And so on behalf of our WSP team, I want to thank the PAC members for your time and effort and your critical eye and comments. So we do appreciate your involvement. So thank you very much. Moving on to the next slide. So I just want to give a quick overview of just the zoning bylaw review process. We're in the final steps. Some of the key changes, and also happy to answer any questions that any member of the committee has. So we started this project last summer, and we are in the final stages. So we've hoping that the bylaw would be adopted, and then once the decision is made, there would be a notice of decision followed by a 20-day appeal period. And if there are no appeals, then the zoning bylaw would be in full force and effect. In terms of the public engagement to date, we've had a variety of sessions. Most of them were virtual, given the pandemic, but I think we've managed to get through it and virtually, and the quality of comments have been great. we have received, as I mentioned, comments from the public, Planning Advisory Committee, Parks Canada, our Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. We also want to note that we did reach out to the Métis Nation of Ontario and the Algonquins of Ontario, and we've kept them informed every step of the way. And whenever there was a draft or a document for review, we didn't receive any comments from either of those Indigenous communities, but we did reach out to them throughout the process. In terms of the final comprehensive zoning bylaw, so it is available on Speak Up, and we also have made changes based on the comments that we received back through the statutory public meeting that was held back in May. And so if anyone was keen to look at what version and what the changes were from that May version, it is online. But we are looking at this new bylaw, we just want to present some of the changes that have come up. So in terms of your new bylaw, or soon to be new zoning bylaw, it does have 26 sections. The key thing that I want to mention is in section 1, there is a user guide. And so that's a very simple guide at the front of the bylaw that can be used. How do you navigate? What is what does this mean? So it has some illustrations in there. And we hope that that's a good tool to be used because, as general lay people, general public should be able to understand the bylaw, and sometimes it can be daunting. So we try to incorporate a user guide so it makes it a little bit user friendly and a little bit easier to navigate. The administration interpretation section is number 2. Section 3's definitions. One of my favorite sections of the zoning bylaw, because we may have used different terms. What do they actually mean? So I'm always checking that in the section 3. Section 4, general provisions. And so this section is equally as important as your actual zone section, because it could have provisions related to a variety of uses that could be applicable to any property. So it could include provisions such as accessory buildings, so like sheds, parking requirements. All of those things should be are found there. So it should be definitely a section to be reviewed and be familiar with. And of course, we have our individual zones, and then our zoning schedules in section 25. And the approvals is section 26. So that's sort of the overview. In terms of the next slide, please. In terms of the zoning maps or zoning schedules, what I wanted to highlight is that there are 2 types of schedules. So you have A series, and those are the specific zones. And then you have the B series, which are special overlays. And I'll get into more detail about these 2 series of schedules. So the A series, again, is so you have a key map of the entire town boundary, and then each sort of section has sub schedules, because at a big scale it's hard to zoom in. So we've created, with CGIS and the town, we've created these schedules that zoom into those areas a little bit more detailed. So the zone boundaries are outlined in red, and the legend lists all of the zone acronyms that you will also find in the text of the main body. And that's your typical, zoning schedule, if you will. Then the next slide explains the B series. And so these are your special overlays. And so the zoning bylaw has 2 overlays, so a natural heritage overlay and a source water protection overlay. And so first you would go to your A series schedule, find the zone, then you would look at the B series schedules to see if that particular property has an overlay. And there are provisions in the bylaw to deal with both of these overlays. Once council approves the zoning bylaw, both the A series and B series schedules will be converted into an interactive map on the town's online community map website. So that will be a fluid opportunity and way to review the zoning. In addition, the town will also receive hard copy schedules and the zoning bylaw, but I believe the anticipation or the expectation is that the online mapping will be kept up to date. So that's sort of the maps, the visuals. In terms of key changes, so the town's current zoning bylaw has 22 zones. We've deleted 3 zones, so bringing it down to 19 zones, and then we've consolidated some zones. And the reason for these changes were based on recommendations that were made in the zoning strategy report, which was a document that was made available earlier in the project process, then it was up for review. Just for a little bit more detail, the residential type 2 zone was deleted because it only applied to one property in your current zoning bylaw. And the residential type 3 zone was also deleted as it wasn't used for any property in the town boundary. And then the general commercial zone was deleted, and the commercial zones were restructured. And the existing site-specific exception zone for a portion of Lombard Street now has its own zone. And the reason why several commercial zones were consolidated is that they were underutilized, and there was duplication in terms of similar permitted uses. So we just tried to simplify that and sort of clean it up with this process. So in terms of new zones, we have, and we've spent a lot of time with town staff on the downtown areas and really looking forward, and so with that, we created the downtown core zone, the downtown fringe, the downtown waterfront zone. So those are the acronyms for these zones are in brackets. As I mentioned, we have the Lombard Street commercial zone. So that was formerly an exception zone in the C1 zone. We also renamed 4 zones, and we maintained 7 other zones. And just on the downtown zones, I just want to mention that they are generally aligned with the boundaries of the downtown core land use designation in the town's official plan. So again, a zoning bylaw has to be in conformity with the town's official plans. We had to do that review to make sure, does it make sense with the boundaries, the zones, the intended vision and use. And the intent was really to create these zones to encourage development as a focal point for retail, service, tourism, and administrative functions in the town. And I think that's all that I want to say on that. So we can move on. In terms of some other key changes, so again, I mentioned section 4 is the general provisions. So specifically section 4.28, parking and loading area regulations. So this section has been revised with in consultation with town staff. And so basically we've proposed a flat parking rate for certain non-residential uses at 1 parking space per 50 square meters gross floor area in the downtown core and in the downtown fringe zones to allow for that flexibility for new developments containing commercial uses. We've also proposed minimum parking requirements for other permitted uses, and then a 50% reduction for parking in the downtown core has been maintained, and for other permitted non-residential uses as well. So in the town's current zoning bylaw, a 50% reduction for parking is implemented for all uses. Another key change that we've made in the section 4 of the bylaw is subsection 4.20.6. So this is with various parking requirements. So we wanted to ensure that we had provisions that align with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And there's two types of barrier-free spaces. One is type A, as illustrated on the right-hand side. So those are for larger vehicles, vans that are accessible. So obviously they require a little bit more space. And then type B are somewhat narrower, but still barrier-free. And then we've also provided some provisions about, how many spaces would be required depending on the use, as well the requirement for a 1.5 meter access aisle for both types of spaces, so that there's that accessibility, maneuverability. If there's any vehicles that have the platform that rises, so there's some additional space in vehicles. The other thing with regards to parking is the requirement for electric vehicles or EV parking spaces are provided. The requirements would only apply to new developments. And so we've proposed two standards: a minimum of 20% of the required parking spaces for residential uses in the downtown core, downtown fringe, and downtown waterfront zones shall be designed to permit installation of EV supply equipment, such as charging stations, as well as a minimum of 5% of the required parking spaces for non-residential uses shall be EV parking spaces. So that's sort of a new thing. I think we're seeing more discussion on EVs just generally. So we wanted to include that in the bylaw. In the residential zones, so in terms of lot standards, what we've done is we've reduced the minimum lot size requirement slightly from what the town's current zoning bylaw has. So these are the specific provisions up on the screen. And in addition, we've also created new provisions for lot coverage. Next slide, please, Jill. Thank you. Lot coverage, which would replace existing provisions for minimum landscaped open space. And so the reason for doing this is that it's easier to calculate lot coverage. So how much does your proposed building occupy on the lot, rather than trying to figure out your minimum landscaped open space. So you have open space in the back and the front. It's a little bit more difficult to do, and lot coverage is a standard best practice. And so in consultation with staff, we've decided to do that. So lot coverage provisions have been introduced. And then from a residential permitted use side, we've introduced stacked, which is the top photo, and back-to-back townhouses, which are the bottom. And so in the R4 zone, we've proposed stacked townhouses and back-to-back townhouses to be added as permitted uses. And we've got provisions in there to deal with those developments, so lot area, frontage, yards, etc. And we've also introduced these two building types as definitions in section 3. Then on the next slide, so sections 4 to 25, so those are the individual zones. We've included a number of additional permitted uses that have been added. And this was done to ensure that the zoning bylaw supports development potential in these zones. So for example, a small scale brewery and a small scale distillery would be permitted in the downtown waterfront zone. So again, going back to looking at opportunities for increased development, sort of looking at what other uses could be included. Let's include them now, and try to encourage that development. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the bylaw, to adopt the zoning bylaw is what we're hoping for. Then a notice of decision followed by a 20-day appeal period. And then if there are no appeals, then the new zoning bylaw would be in full force and effect. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Do you mind closing your presentation so that you can see all of us? I'm sure there might be some comments and questions for you. Council, yes, Councillor Dwyer, go ahead.
Thanks, Nadia. I'm so happy to see that our bylaw is coming forward. I think that bylaw is older than perhaps Councillor McGuire, so it's nice to see that it's being updated. A lot of the changes that you've made, especially on the commercial side, reconcile some struggles that we have had for the last 10 years in creating revitalized development in town, but also on a realistic scale. I think we made the decision 20 years ago that we were going to become a facilitator of big box development to create an anchor within our community. But it was done on the premonition that we did not want that to be a competition for our downtown. And I think we've kind of balanced the commercial needs between those two sectors over the years. And I think the work that you guys have done to kind of break out the commercial zones into something that's more realistic and appropriate for our community is really helpful. The only thing I will say gives me some hesitancy in reviewing this is the idea of introducing the stacked and back-to-back towns. And the reason that I'm hesitant is that in the scale of which we would be talking about recognizing those developments, I have concerns about the long-term financial sustainability of operating them as private shared facilities. So when we start looking at how we're putting the stacked townhomes or back-to-back townhomes in particular in collective groups, we're talking about a lot of shared infrastructure, shared driveways, shared service mains, shared stormwater management, and in some cases, even shared garbage. And I worry that at the densities that we would be developing, we'd hit that critical carrying capacity, or rather we would not hit that critical carrying capacity where those units would have the financial sustainability to manage replacement costs into long term, which ultimately, in my experience, leads to people coming back to the municipality to ask for assumption because they just don't have the resources. So while I like the idea that perhaps we could allow it as a rental framework and have a single homeowner or property owner rather taking responsibility for all of those maintenance elements, I worry that by introducing it as a blanket option within the zones, it also opens the door to the creation of these as condominiums on private laneways, which I don't think is sustainable out here. I think aesthetically as well, the built landscape significantly changes when you start doing stacked townhomes and back to back. And I don't think that's the character of our small town. I like the idea of adding density. I would way rather see it in a 5-story apartment building than doing stacked towns in a planned unit. It's not us. It is not reflective of the town of Smith Falls. And those are my only comments. Otherwise, I think it looks great. I can't believe it's all done. Good work, everybody. It's been a long time coming, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dwyer. Councillor McGuire, did you have your hand up at the same time? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Councillor Alfred did before me, though.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead. I've asked you. I can go there next.
Thanks a lot, Nadia. This is the first time I've read the zoning bylaw through from start to finish, so I think that's a testament to how much easier you guys have made it to read and get through. I like the guide at the front. I was a little confused on the grid structure of it, but once I got that, I was good. I've got a few questions from my reading. The first is with the shipping containers. I know there's shipping containers seem to be popping up around town, and it was really nice to see that addressed in the bylaw. What's going to happen to existing structures the way it's been worded? Will those have to be removed, or what will the process be like going forward there?
Through you, Madam Chair, sorry, I'm not sure if I need to comment now on Councillor Dwyer's comments, or do we hear all comments and then do I go back and respond to all of them, including Councillor McGuire's question? Just in terms of process. Oh, you're on mute, Madam Chair.
Sorry, just to make it easier, I think, Nadia, if you don't mind answering one by one. So if you could answer to Councillor Dwyer first and then Councillor McGuire, and we'll try and keep it that way if you don't mind.
Okay, sure, no problem. So thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Dwyer, for your comments. So just to clarify, for the stacked and back-to-back townhouses, the zoning bylaw doesn't include any provisions that deal with, ownership, right? That's up to the proponent, and that would go through a separate site plan process. I can say from personal experience, I did live in a stacked townhouse here in the city of Ottawa, and it was freehold with some condo shared elements. And it was great. It was the only way that I could actually enter the housing market that at a price point that was affordable for me. And so the intent behind introducing these forms of development is to create other opportunities for and allow a different housing type to be introduced by a proponent in the town. And how the financials and ownership, rental, all of that would get sorted out by a future proponent of this kind. And so that's that. And the zoning bylaw would not get into the details of ownership and all of that. That's left for a proponent. Councillor McGuire, through you, Madam Chair.
Nadia, I think Councillor Dwyer wanted to make a comment, if you don't mind.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Nadia, I appreciate that. I really do. I think the problem becomes that once you introduce the concept in the zoning bylaw, that you're setting yourself up for the eventual part lot control applications or a condominium, that paves the way for that. So once you introduce the concept, there isn't any going back. And while the mechanics of ownership and setting up corporations to manage the assets is separate from the zoning bylaw, it doesn't change my opinion that I don't think that they're appropriate in the context of Smiths Falls, and B, I think we open ourselves up to significant problems down the line that primarily exist from ownership. But again, I think as soon as we introduce the concept here, it's going to be very, very hard to deny refusing an application on the grounds that it's out of character with our town because it already exists in the policy. So and I do appreciate that housing affordability, yeah, it's huge, and in the city of Ottawa where land prices have skyrocketed far in excess of what is here, it does make sense. But I still think for the context that we're working in Smiths Falls, I cannot see stacked townhomes and back-to-back townhomes being community appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you want to answer Councillor McGuire now before we move on?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So Councillor McGuire, your question about the existing shipping containers. And I can also defer to Mr. Grenke as well for any further comment, but for those that do exist, they would probably be legally non-complying without knowing all the specifics of where they are. I think I have seen some municipalities create, shipping containers bylaw. I'm not suggesting that, but I think it's a case-by-case basis. I would caution the town if there is a property owner who's adding more containers to a situation that doesn't comply, then I think that's a discussion that has to be had between the town and property owner. Mr. Carl, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything to that.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, I would agree with Nadia that that an existing condition would be grandfathered based on the rights accorded to it under the Planning Act, and this would be best placed to regulate any proposed new placements of shipping containers as accessory buildings.
Okay, that's disappointing, just because I agree with the current bylaw where they don't belong in the residential areas. When we look at, there's a part on satellite dishes that say that they have to be in the front or exterior side yards. I'm wondering what the reason is for that versus interior and rear yards.
So through you, Madam Chair, so the satellite dishes, those can be considered permitted projections into interior side yards or rear yards. One of the things, again, based from personal experience, is the location of those satellite dishes also depends on the signal, right? Where the signal can come from, and if there's tree coverage or trees that would interfere with that. So, you know, we can definitely, they could be located in, you know, other yards as a permitted projection and subject to the actual functionality of the satellite receiving the signal.
Okay, so there's not really a strong purpose of that aspect or that line in the bylaw, or?
Sorry,
I don't understand. If people, it says in there they can only put them in their front and exterior side yards, but they can really put them anywhere, or?
They could be permitted, usually the front or rear, again, depending on the property. And, you know, if you're on a larger lot, maybe the interior side yard might make sense, but the rationale is usually the front and rear, usually, especially in the front yard, has more area for the signal to come through as well. So I think, you know, they could be considered a permitted projection. Again, it's also subject to the property and what's on the property.
Okay. I'm a big supporter of the changes in parking requirements. I think even with the parking requirements in the bylaw, we'd never be able to build our downtown as it exists today. So I would almost like to see them go more reduced in certain areas, but I think this is a big move in the right direction. Under the keeping of animals section, I'm wondering if the town decided to allow backyard chickens, would that require a zoning bylaw amendment, or is that, how's that keeping of animals section written?
So through you, Madam Chair, usually it's through an animal control bylaw. I'm sorry, I know Ms. Crowder had commented on the town's website, so we haven't been able to confirm whether that exists, but most municipalities would have that to regulate urban chickens, if you will.
Okay, so there's nothing that would require us to go through this process if the animal control bylaw needed to be changed.
That's correct.
Okay, that's great. For the windows facing rear yards in additional units, I think I read somewhere that there's no windows that are allowed to face the rear yard. Now, if my understanding is right, that setback's 3 meters, but you could have the windows on the side that only needs a 1.2 meter setback. So I'm not sure why we can't have windows on the back of a property, but you'd have the windows at the side of the property where it could go closer to the neighbors. Is that, am I making sense there?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councilor McGuire, do you have a specific section, or do you have a noted where that is?
Yeah, if you just
In
give
the
me a
bylaw.
okay. I think it was an additional residential unit section. Yeah, the additional residential unit shall not contain windows facing the required rear yard. Section C, 5C. Under 4.2.
Okay, that, thank you. The purpose of that provision is so that there is so that there aren't any issues with privacy, so that if you're having an additional residential unit, especially if it's a like a separate building or separate structure in the rear yard, that you're not having those windows face into the rear yard of the abutting property. So mainly for privacy reasons. I know there's different forms of additional residential units. And also it was also to ensure that the rear yard space could also be used by the owner, right, to have that that functional space on the property too. Okay, so if you can have the windows 1.2 meters from your neighbor on the side, but at the back you can't. You see where I could almost, I'd like to see that taken out, just because I don't think we should have to make somebody go through a minor variance just to put windows on an additional unit when we're trying to get more housing, kind of thing, you know? So through you, Madam Chair, and I will also defer to Mr. Grenke to augment anything else. So the intention is that the additional residential unit would be ancillary, right, to a permitted semi-detached or a townhouse dwelling. And so they have windows on interior side yards are common. That's how things are built right now. But when you have a separate structure as an additional residential unit, and if it's separate, it's almost like having two sets of windows, right? So two dwelling units onto the back of facing the rear of property. So by eliminating the need for windows on your ancillary structure, your additional residential unit, again, it's just to help create compatibility, create usability of the backyards, and also just for privacy reasons. Carl, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else. Maybe there's more explanation as well in the user guide for the additional residential units that you mentioned.
Yes, no, through you, Madam Chair. I think Nadia covered it quite well, and privacy was the key determination in investigating policies such as that, and certainly we recognize the amendment of the zoning bylaw to allow additional residential units, detached additional residential units, is certainly a fairly big step. It's required by the Planning Act, of course, but it opens up a new form of housing that we didn't have. But that's one of the performance standards in there that's intended to sort of guide it and ensure compatibility within the existing neighborhood framework as best as possible. And so that is the rationale from my recollection of the conversations leading to this policy. Okay, thanks. I think from my understanding of it, I'd like to see that come out. I'd be interested to hear if there's a consensus for it, just to keep it flexible. And I don't think the rear yards deserve more privacy than the side yards. My last point is with the entertainment use that's on corridor commercial right now. I'm wondering, is that something that needs to be required in a certain zone, or is that something we could take out of the corridor commercial uses? Through you, Madam Chair. So that use is currently permitted in the commercial core, but if the decision is to have that use removed as of right, that can be done. We would maintain the use in the definition section unless there's direction otherwise. Then any one who wants to propose that use would have to go through the rezoning process. I would propose that it's removed because the corridor commercial are often first impression areas of our town, and I just don't see a need for it. So two things I'd like to hear if there's a consensus on, but overall, thank you very much. It's really exciting to get the product tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Alfred, did you have your hand up and I missed you? I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Both Councillor Brennan and I sit on the Planning Advisory Committee, and we've seen this document multiple times, and very pleased with how responsive both our staff and the consultant have been to not only PAC's questions and concerns, but also those from the public as well. I'm not sure exactly where to start with one of them. I might just mention to Councillor Dwyer that there's already a stacked townhouse planned on Thurber Street. So I don't know that I share. I don't know that I share her concerns, and there is already one planned. For me, the changes, a lot of them reflect the new realities in our town, and they address a number of issues that we want to try to responsibly manage in terms of our growth and where it grows and how it grows, but also address the modernization of the approach to support housing or support different kinds of developments to create opportunities for a variety of housing, be it a stock townhouse, and if that makes home ownership more affordable, or in as many different ways as we can. And I think that's what's facing in the Canadian housing crisis. That is what a lot of municipalities are trying to address. I'm going to need a few minutes if someone else wants to talk about their impressions of this, to consider Councillor McGuire's suggestions. Again, some of these things did come up at PAC, and some of these things were discussed there, and the Planning Advisory Committee members, I commend them, not only them, but the staff and the consultant. So I'll take a few more minutes, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, to think about what Councillor McGuire.
I think Mayor Panko wanted to make a comment, so go ahead, Mayor Panko.
Thank you. Just carrying on the theme with Councillor McGuire regarding additional residential units. I agree. I prefer to have that restriction regarding no rear-facing windows on the ARU, especially when you consider it could be the back part of a house, perhaps an old summer kitchen that an older home has been converted to an apartment, additional residential unit, and the restriction of having no window space in the rear yard. That situation especially is prohibitive. The other concern is the 3-meter setback at the rear yard. And if you're envisioning some of our properties around town, having the ARU set closer to the rear lot line, in my mind, would maybe create more open space within the yard that the homeowner and the tenant of an ARU would decide how they would use that. Having a small 3-meter chunk of yard behind the ARU, I think, limits someone's ability to enjoy their own backyard. So those, overall, I'm very pleased with what we see here. It is extensive, affecting every property in town, extremely comprehensive, but yet what's presented is much simpler, more straightforward. So I support the entire bylaw. I just would like to see those changes regarding the ARUs.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Thank you. And yes, as Councillor Alford said, we've been meeting since last March on this, and I want to commend staff and the consultant for the work and your responsiveness to the concerns we made. I heard the concerns of a couple of my colleagues today, and I think we're getting in the weeds a little bit. With the rear yard windows, and we're talking about satellite dishes. I'll give you an example. The apartments that have been built on Brockville Street, their windows look upon people that live on Wood Avenue, and I haven't heard any concerns from the people at Wood Avenue. So I think that the big thing of this for me is the way new zoning bylaw set up, and it's so user friendly for people that want to access it, and I love those features. So I'm happy to support this bylaw as written, and I think it's a great update.
Thank you. Councillor Alford, did you have your hand up again? Did you want to comment again?
Just one quick one, Madam Chair, because I think I'm prepared to support, as Councillor Brennan is, this as it stands. But with regard to the 3 meter setback and the windows backing onto the in the backyard, certainly when we talked about it at PAC, one of the concerns is not for the people in that yard, is for the people who would be abutting them in their backyards. And what can we do to give them some more privacy if you're putting an ARU at the back of an existing house? So that's what the comment I would make. And while I appreciate the comments, I think I'm prepared also to support it as stands.
Councillor Dwyer, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, and I don't know if Nadia can answer this or not, but I mean, separation distances between window openings, not for privacy, but for fire safety, is dictated by the Ontario Building Code. So is this not something that we could simply leave out of the zoning bylaw and leave to the building code to regulate based on openable areas?
Through you, Madam Chair. So yes, the building separation distances and window openings is definitely governed by the Ontario Building Code. However, the windows, I do know that, and I'm currently working on a coach house file here in the city of Ottawa, and they don't require windows on the back of a coach house, so an additional residential unit, exactly for the reason for the property to the rear to have privacy there. So it's up to how the town wants to see that. So I'm
Thank you, Nadia. I think that answers my question.
It really is up to the town. Yeah, I think I answered the question. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I'm thinking and not talking. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think that does answer my question. And I mean, my stance would be ARUs are something that have a world of potential to provide affordable housing, truly meaningful affordable housing, and aging in place infrastructure. And my policy is that they should be as inclusive as possible. So if we can get rid of the red tape around setbacks, then by all means, please do.
Thank you for that. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll get Councillor McGuire's question out of the way. I think if I heard him correctly, his point was it's 1.5 meters on the side of the house and 3 at the back. Make it consistent. I think that was really what about the so I'm supportive of just making that consistent, and if it means getting windows at the back of the RU, I'm all for it. That's out of the way. I had a question. Overall very pleased and happy to support the proposed zoning bylaw. I did have a question on the definition side, and I looked at the difference between a place of worship and a religious institution. And the place of worship was very generic and could apply to any religious orientation at all. But I found the religious institution to be very Christian oriented, and specifically talking about Bible study and things like that. So if we could just make them both a little bit denominational neutral, if there is such a word, I would prefer that as the place of worship is. And so overall, I'm very pleased. And I did hear an interesting statistic, and that's why I'm very pleased to see the additional residential units and more density in our town, is that I think we're losing 300 acres a day of agricultural farmland to development. And that sprawl, it may not, I think the character of our town has to change that we have to be part of the solution, and the density, we have to do our fair share in intensifying the population and maximizing the resources. And I think this zoning bylaw does that. So thank you for that.
I'll go last. I've read this a couple of times, read through it, and I'm comparing it to what we've had in the past. I think it's excellent. The windows I hadn't given any thought to until Councillor McGuire brought that up, but it doesn't seem to be anything that's bothering others, so I'm not sure we're going to change that. And in terms of the stacked, I was worried about it because I wasn't aware we have one in the process, as Councillor Alfred just said, but I wouldn't want to see a lot of that. I don't think it's, it's sort of what our community's like, but again, I think there seems to be support for that. So all in all, Nadia, this is a very well done document and we really appreciate it. I've been here 12 years and this is great to have this now. It's something that will stand the test of time, I think. So thank you for your work, both of you. Mayor Panko, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just to get some clarity surrounding the ARUs and the issues both Councillor McGuire and myself raised, and I think Councillor McKenna seemed to be agreement. I think Councillor Dwyer as well, in that we don't want to be as prescriptive with window placement on an ARU and leave that open to the homeowner, the developer. And secondly, I think to Councillor McKenna's point, maybe aligning the setbacks to be the same from the side yard as they are from the rear yard, I think at 1.5 meters. So is it possible for committee to have a decision on those two considerations?
Could I have a show of hands who agrees with what Mayor Panko just said? Okay, you have your direction then. Good. Thank you. Yes.
So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to confirm that this item is on the
coming forward in council meeting following this. Yes.
Yes, so it would include those amendments, but it would come forward tonight if supported.
Yes. Councillor McGuire, do you have your hand up for another comment? Or?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I'd also like to take a straw vote on the removing the adult entertainment designation from the corridor commercial areas.
So say that again, just so that we know what we're voting on.
So there's a definition of adult entertainment use in the current bylaw. The only section that's allowed in right now is corridor commercial. Corridor commercial is often a first impression area of town, so I'd like to take that off the uses there. If there's
hands, who agrees with Councillor McGuire? I guess we don't have enough to carry that forward. Okay, so as we've already said, that's going to be part of our council meeting following this one. And again, thank you very much for your hard work on this, Nadia and Jill. Nice to have you here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to, again, all commenters and input and town staff. It was definitely a team effort from beginning to almost the end.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, our next priority issue is the Municipal Heritage Committee Proposed Heritage Designations Report 2022-64. And I understand it's going to be led by Dorothy, our chair of our Municipal Heritage Committee. Is that correct? Deputy Bennett?
I believe Senior Planner Grenke is going to introduce the report, and then yes.
That's great. Go ahead, Carl.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening once again. I'm very pleased to introduce the chair of our Municipal Heritage Committee, who's going to be presenting on 3 proposed heritage designations for properties in the town. So 39 Russell Street East, described as the Doctor's House, 102 Brockville Street, Matthew Ryan House, and 110 Brockville Street, the John B. Ward House. And I'd certainly like to acknowledge the work of the Municipal Heritage Committee in researching and bringing this to the forefront. The town has reached out to each of the property owners for this and invited the owners to attend a meeting of the Municipal Heritage Committee to discuss if they wanted to, and we haven't received any feedback. So our assumption based on that is we do not have the objection of the property owners. Once Chair Hudson presents her report, then we'll reconvene the committee and we'll welcome council's direction. And if council supports the designations, the next step that we would recommend is that we be directed to undertake the statutory notifications under the Ontario Heritage Act for each of the property owners. So I think Councillor McGuire.
Yes, Councillor McGuire, did you have a comment or question before we?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I've got a pecuniary interest on this one, so I'm going to remove myself from the meeting.
Thank you. Welcome, Dorothy. Nice to have you here.
Could I ask, the slideshow has been prepared in order to do the bylaw revisions first. So is it possible, Carl, that you could present that report before I begin the slideshow?
With your permission,
Yes,
Chair
go
Allen?
ahead. Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead. That would be fine.
Thank you. So our second MHC report is with respect to the rewrite of most of the heritage bylaws that we have. So as council will recall, we set aside some funds to retain a consultant, in this case MTBA, to undertake a review and rewrite of our existing heritage designation bylaws that were written over a wide range of eras under a wide range of legislative heritage provisions, and in many cases were not very detailed and descriptive in terms of identifying the heritage attributes for protection. And the Municipal Heritage Committee and staff and council all identified a need to update these bylaws for everybody's for the benefit of everybody, and to give a degree of certainty to the development community and anyone else who's looking to undertake work, so that we know what's important and what needs to be protected. Also, the changes to the Ontario Heritage Act that came effective earlier last year include more prescriptive criteria. And in this case, that is something that's going to be very helpful. So following Dorothy's presentation, again, we'll look for council's direction on the next steps. We are not obligated under the Act to notify property owners of rewrites of this nature. However, it is the staff recommendation that we be directed to undertake this. And in the event that there are objections, then certainly we can proceed to council for direction. But ultimately, these rewrites create more certainty and more description, but they do not create or alter the intent of any of the designations. So once again, I will turn it over to Dorothy for her presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Senior Planner Granke. The Municipal Heritage Committee is pleased to present these proposed bylaw revisions to council. Could we have the slideshow, please? In all, 14 existing heritage bylaws were revised by MTBA Heritage Consultants so that they now comply with the requirements of the Ontario Heritage Act, as Senior Planner Granke informed us. This list of 14 properties actually excludes 3 other heritage properties in town, which are the Wood Mill Complex, the Basquiat Bridge, and the Railway Museum, because these have been designated nationally rather than municipally. There's a lot of material attached to our presentation, and I've decided to present only the suggested bylaw revision for Town Hall, since it's a property we're all familiar with. The other 13 bylaw revisions follow the same format as this one, and as a result, the MHC now has a template for future heritage designation proposals. So as you can see, in this new template, we start out with the general identifying information. Then the Act requires a current photo of the property, then a brief description of the property, which is down at the bottom of this slide. Next slide, please. Then the body of the bylaw really is the statement of cultural heritage value. And a heritage designation bylaw must convey why the property is important and why it merits designation. Therefore, it has to meet at least one of the criteria set out in the Act. These criteria are contextual value or location, design or physical value, which is the architectural features, and historical or associative value. And for each of our designated properties, the consultants have presented evidence that they meet all three of these criteria. In the case of Town Hall, its location at the top of Beckwith Street with other important buildings close by provides its contextual value. The architectural detail provided gives evidence of the building's architectural value, and the history of Town Hall, going back to 1859 as described in the proposed revision of the bylaw, also has significant heritage value. Another important part of the revised bylaw is the key heritage attributes section. Now, this information is also required by the legislation. You'll notice that this section has been separated into external and internal attributes. This is true for the other public buildings on the list, but not for the private properties. For those, it's just the exterior features that are listed. These character-defining elements are important and should be protected and preserved according to the standards and guidelines. And then, next slide, please. Could I have the next slide, please? And then to finish off, we have the legal description, the references, the site plan, and on the next slide, something that wasn't, I believe, was not required by the Act, but we have here a historic photo of the designated property. Senior Planner Brenke, would you like me to just go ahead with the new proposed new heritage bylaws?
Yes, please.
Okay, next slide, please. It's the other set of slides. Thank you. We now request that Council consider these three new heritage designations. They're residential properties whose owners have been consulted over a period of more than a year regarding our plan to present to you for designation. They're important architecturally and historically, and draft bylaws have been prepared for these properties by the MTBA consultants. Next slide, please. This is the first, at 39 Ruffle Street East. This property is known as the Doctor's House. It was built in 1887, and it's a fine example of Italianate architecture with distinctive features of an Italian villa. It's also historically significant, having been the residence and surgery of 4 doctors from 1901 to 1956. It has since been converted into a residence, and although it has been significantly altered over the years, the house has retained many of its character-defining elements, which are listed in the proposed bylaw. Next slide, please. The second is 102 Brockville Street, known as the Matthew Ryan House. It was built in 1889 for Ryan, who was a prominent contractor in Smith Falls, and it retains its original separate brick carriage house on Elm Street. This house also displays several Italianate features, which are listed in the proposed bylaw, as well as a Victorian-style veranda, which was added around 1900. The main historical association for this property is with Matthew Ryan, who was a successful contractor, a brick manufacturer, a town councillor, and a racetrack owner. He built our fire hall and hose tower. He built the original St. Francis de Sales School, Woods Mill, the Smith Falls Public Market Building, the Carleton Place Town Hall, and many more buildings. Ryan owned a farm on the Jasper Road, which he converted into a public park with a racetrack, grandstand, and steeplechase park. The area continues to be known as Ryan's Park, even though it is now a subdivision. The third property is 110 Brockville Street, known as the John B. Ward House. It was built around 1865 for one of the sons of Abel Russell Ward, one of our founding settlers. The house originally occupied a 5-acre lot and is a fine example of Georgian neoclassical architecture, the details of which are listed in the proposed bylaw. The semicircular front porch and the balcony dates back only to 1966, but has been included as a heritage attribute because it enhances the neoclassical architecture of the house. Historically, this house has also been the home of a doctor who reportedly owned the first telephone in Smith Falls, which connected his house with his surgery. And later it was the home of Forrest Davidson, who was the owner of Davidson's Bakery on Russell Street West. And all the details of the heritage attributes and all the research that was conducted by the heritage consultants is all included in your information package. Thank you very much.
Take the PowerPoint down now. There you go. Dorothy has been the chair of our committee, and before we hired this group to do our write-ups, Dorothy has done many for us, and she's acted as our chair and is an amazing leader in heritage in our community. So I'd like to thank her for that. And are there comments or questions from my colleagues to Dorothy, please? Go ahead, Councillor Alfred.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just it's a brilliant piece of work, actually. And as far as 8.2 is concerned, I am supportive of the 3 getting that designation. But we've skipped around here a little bit, so I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to comment on 8.3 yet.
Well, if you don't mind, I think that would be helpful to our long agenda today. So okay. Yes. Go ahead. She's spoken to both and will probably be leaving shortly after this. So if you don't mind.
I just would say that I support all of the, I think it was 14 more, but I have grave concerns about one in particular, and that's the old water treatment plant. Building number 4, the single-story concrete block that was built in the 50s. It does, as the report says, shows the evolution of the complex, but I'm concerned about the barriers keeping it could pose to the development of that site. So I understand wanting to preserve the older ones, but I am leery about the building 4 because the group of them tells our story, our past, but I don't want it to thwart the story of our future.
Okay, so Councillor McGuire's back to talk about this. That's good. Okay, yes. Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
I'd like to separate the conversations still with 8.2 and 8.3, just because I've got a conflict on, I believe it's 8.
No, I was just going to suggest that. I'm sorry that I hadn't thought of that. So why don't we just, while you're here, why don't we talk about the heritage debt rewrites, the designation of the number of them. And then
I'm really excited to see this. We've been talking about it as a committee since I joined the committee, and a big thanks to Dorothy and all the members of the committee and Carl and council for giving us the money to hire the consultants to get this done. It's a huge step forward, and I think it's going to make everything a lot easier when these properties have work getting done on them. To address Councillor Alfred's comment on the water treatment plant, it's a fair one. I think it's important to note at the same time that the foundation of that building gives important waterfront access that may not be grandfathered in if it was removed. So it does, you know, this is something that needs to be worked out with the redevelopment of the site, but the way it's written, and I think the way the committee and the consultants have interpreted it, I don't see it being a limiter to development. But it is important to acknowledge and document this stuff before the development happens.
Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Overall, I'm happy, but I do want to speak directly to Councillor Alfred's point. I think it is a fair one. I think the difference between approving the bylaw now versus a bylaw that's not on a municipal property is that it's our discretion to remove it in the future should we choose, and so it doesn't have the same complexities of putting the bylaw in effect on a private property and then that private property owner wanting to develop it. And then, you know, there's that opportunity for further review from the municipality. If it is our prerogative to demo part of the structure, then there's a process that we would go through, and you'd either apply to the alteration of the bylaw to remove that section, or you remove it in totality. But I think, like Councillor McGuire said, I think it is important to, at least at this point, get that bylaw in place. If there is a need to demo in the future, then we can deal with it at that time.
Anyone else have comments about, right now we're talking about all of the properties that Dorothy's just told us about, the rewrites. Anyone else have comments? Councillor Brennan, go ahead.
Thank you, Dorothy, and thank you for your passion. Sounds familiar to me. Yeah, I support this, and I understand where my colleague Councillor Alfred's coming from. However, I think that as Councillor Dwyer just stated, we can deal with that down the road. But overall, I support both pieces of this. Notwithstanding Councillor McGuire's conflict on one piece, but I'll just say that and I'll be done.
Anyone else want to speak to the designation rewrites before we go ahead, Mayor Panko?
Thank you. Again, I support the 3 new additions, and thank Dorothy, the consultant, the MHC, and everyone involved in bringing these forward, as well as the rewrites of the existing bylaws. I've same reservations as Councillor Alfred on this with buildings 3 and 4. I appreciate Councillor Dwyer's comment and Councillor McGuire's comment that really the future council can essentially just decide not to follow the designation on 3 and 4 and allow demolition for future development. Obviously, we'd want to make sure that the footprint of these buildings would be available for future development, and if a demolition prior to a reconstruction is not in place and we're not assured, I don't want to leave a risk of that footprint being narrowed by park standard restrictions potentially. So I don't see, I appreciate there's some merit in designating building 3, building 4. I don't see it all, but I prefer that we simply stick to 1 and 2.
Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, I concur with just the last comment. I'm supportive overall, but those side attachments in their 1950s, being born in the 1950s, I guess I don't look. Anyways, I think we're tying our hands, and I never think it's going to be easy to reverse a decision down the road. And Councillor Dwyer didn't say it was going to be easy. She said we have the means to do it. So I would prefer not. If we could leave those off of that list, I would prefer that. But excellent work on all the others. It's wonderful to celebrate the heritage of our community.
Okay, so it looks like we have everyone agreeing to the 2, but the water treatment plant, it looks like we have 3 people against. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd just like to speak to the water treatment plant designation one last time.
Go ahead.
Councillor Dwyer said it's not, or she said it's doable, and Councillor McKenna says it might not be easy. I don't think it should be easy to demolish a building. When a building's demolished, the amount of greenhouse gases that were released with the carbon dioxide, the bricks in the landfill, it's a huge waste when something's demolished that could have been repurposed. And I think that including it in the designation says that we want to take a good look at it and make sure that if it is salvageable, it's used. And if it's not salvageable, we understand, we've documented it, and it's time to remove it. But to go with a demolition friendly attitude towards this, I don't think it reflects our values towards climate change. I don't think it reflects our values towards protecting the heritage of the site on a UNESCO waterway. And I really think it needs some serious thought that if we're going to go against the consultants that we've paid money to, that have done work on the Parliament buildings in downtown Ottawa, and are very well respected in the heritage world, that that there's more than just an easy demolition permit is the reason down the road. If it needs to be demolished, fair enough, but let's give it a chance first.
Go ahead, Dorothy. Did you want to make a comment in regards to this?
Yes, please. It's my understanding that the entire complex is currently designated. It's not partly designated, so the bylaw rewrite is for the entire complex.
That's right. Okay, so I agree with Councillor McGuire and Councillor Dwyer. I would like this, for the same reason that Councillor McGuire just eloquently explained. When we designate a property like this, it's the whole property unless there's no hope of including it in the project. But am I right in saying, and I'd like to show of hands, that my 4 others are saying no, they don't care if it has to be demolished? Could you raise your hand if that's your thought? Councillor Alfred, go ahead.
The way you framed that, Madam Chair, that you've got 4 that don't care if it's demolished. That is not
No,
exactly.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it so. No, 4 people feel that the developer may need to do some things to it, change it somehow, or take parts of it down. Am I right in saying that?
I think I can't speak for anybody else, but my point is that I don't want to designate. I want to decide which part could be sacrificed on the altar of our future development there. I don't want to put more barriers in the way of a already complex site to get a developer to do something there. So that's what is my point. I don't want to put any more burdens on anybody who's going to take that job on. It's already complex enough without formalizing that building. For me, it's building 4. It's not of the same importance as the rest of the complex.
Thank you for that.
In my opinion.
Councillor McGuire and then Councillor Dwyer have something to add. Go ahead.
Councillor Dwyer can go before me. I'm just looking something up here, sir.
Okay, Councillor Dwyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my understanding is that once the designation is registered, which I mean, there's already a designation on the property today, it runs on title for the entire property. The benefit of having these more specific bylaws is to articulate things that are of significant concern that warrant analysis before any action can be taken. But if the town left off the 2 framing buildings from the later eras, we would still be required at the time of demolition to do a heritage impact statement for the property and the impact of the loss of those buildings at that time anyways. So my sense is that if the bylaw gives specific criteria about those 2 additional buildings from the 1950s, that can help actually frame the analysis at the time of demolition, which may save us an awful lot of grief when it comes time to evaluate whether or not there's a need for them to come down. If the bylaw is simply moot on it, then the heritage impact statement would have to be much more comprehensive to be able to analyze whether or not there's going to be an impact created from the demolition and removal of those buildings. So my suggestion remains that I think at this point, it is better for us to leave them in place at this time and evaluate it at the future when the time it comes.
Thank you. And I agree with you. Councillor McGuire, did you want to change or add something to this?
Yeah, Councillor Dwyer said it exactly. And I just
I agree with her. And Councillor McKenna has his hand up just to say something or ask a question.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. No, I really appreciate that explanation and that further clarity from Councillor Dwyer. That really does mean a lot to me, and I think I'd be fine with proceeding as staff recommended.
Okay, that go ahead, Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is the property. I'm far from being an expert in heritage, and I respect Dorothy's wisdom as well as Councillor McGuire, Councillor Dwyer, and I think the next council, hopefully, a number of us are back here to deal with this again, and we'll make a decision on what happens with this particular site. But for now, I will support the staff recommendation as well.
So it looks like we do have support Senior Planner Grenke to go put these forward in council tonight. And Dorothy, go ahead, Carol, go ahead.
Just one quick question as well. The Heritage Act does not require us to give notification to the property owners for these alterations, but staff recommend that we be directed to do so, just to keep everybody in the loop, and that the legal advice we received as well is we're not obligated to register the bylaws on title, but again, our advice is that we do, just so that we have the most up-to-date versions on title for everybody's interests. So I'm just seeking council's concurrence with that approach.
I'm seeing, yes, you have your, everyone agrees. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just to confirm, these bylaws aren't on the agenda for tonight. My understanding from staff was that they weren't to come forward tonight, so they are not on the special council agenda.
They'll come forward at another meeting.
Yeah. Councillor
Dwyer.
Thank you. I know I can appreciate that the blending of these two items has been a bit of a hot mess, but may the clerk please let the record show that Councillor McGuire has tried his hardest to get in and out with the declared interests where necessary.
Yes, it's noted in the minutes the many times he stepped in and out, so thank you for that.
Thank you for that as well. Okay. Moving on to priority issue 8.4 is the lifting of holding zone 188 Chambers, Lanark County Housing. And it's report 2022-125 with Senior Planner Grenke. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On June 20th, 2022, Council adopted a bylaw rezoning property at the end of 188 Chambers Street from a light industrial special exception zone to a residential type 4 special exception zone to accommodate the construction of a 5-unit multi-dwelling, single-story multiple dwelling house that would be owned and maintained by Lanark County Housing for rent geared to income housing. The zoning bylaw that was adopted by council also recognized some of the constraints on the property, and including the access to the property as well as its location adjacent a rail line. And as such, a holding provision was placed on the zoning, which is effectively establishes conditions of zoning that need to be met before final approval can be given. So the conditions of the hold in this case would be satisfied through site plan approval. So since that time, the applicants have filed site plan approval, and we worked with staff have worked with the applicants over the course of the summer to finalize the key items, including some of the technical details on that. We have a couple of very minor site plan items that we're still working on, as discussed at Planning Advisory Committee, such as some of the vegetation. But the key features have been addressed to our satisfaction. So at this point, given there is some time sensitivity with respect to the application, and that this and construction with respect to some of the funds available. At this stage, staff are recommending that council adopts a bylaw to lift the holding provision for on the zoning on this property, and that provision comes into effect upon final approval and registration of the site plan agreement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Can I see hands up of people who approve? Okay, it looks like that, and I believe that is on tonight's council meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Nadine.
Madam Chair, I know there's been confirmation for this. I'm just wondering if we can jump back, that the last two discussions were a little muddled, and I know that we confirmed the bylaw rewrites, but I'd like for Councillor McGuire's, to respect his declaration. He could turn off his camera, and if we could just get the direction on those 3 properties that were recommended by the MHC to be designated. If we can just confirm that action as well.
Yes.
Just for the minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Carl. It's great. Go ahead, Councillor Alfred.
Just one note, Madam Chair, on the 188 Chambers holding zone. Yes, I am supportive of staff's recommendation. It's in keeping with the strategic plan and will allow us to facilitate more housing options to the degree the municipality can. There seems to be some misunderstanding of what a municipality can and cannot do. We try to facilitate with zoning changes and other procedures to make more enticing to developers or nonprofits or any of those places, to streamline that so that they will entertain notions of making housing options, multiple kinds of housing options. But I just want to make clear that the municipality is not either a builder or a landlord in terms of how we facilitate something like this nonprofit. Well, this particular development at 188 Chambers. That's the case everywhere in Smith Falls.
Yes, thank you for that. Any other comments before we leave this? Councillor Brennan, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I echo that. And the county delivers housing, we pay them. The other part of it is the province is under pressure as well for affordable housing. And I've heard the Premier say many, many times, he wants to partner with municipalities. And the way we can do that is exactly what Councillor Alfred said, provide relief for planning fees and that sort of thing, and even land if we have it, and we're doing that. So we're an able partner with the province, and I know that they'll come through for us down the road. So good comments.
Thank you. Mayor Panko, go ahead.
And just those comments, this project is funded with provincial dollars. So there's a great commitment to create 5 attainable housing units.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to priority issue 8.5. That's, by the way, that's coming to council tonight.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nadine.
Sorry, Madam Chair, my apologies to interrupt again. I've had a request from Director McMunn to move up the food cycler report as the next item, as he has a guest in attendance for the meeting. Yes. So
we're happy to do that. So we will be doing 8.6 food cycler pilot program completion update report 2022-120. And again, that's with Director McMunn. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, thanks for the late adjustment, but I do have Alex Heyman here from Food Cycler Science, and he's got another place to be here shortly. So I just want to use him this evening for his presentation. If council will recall, back in March of this year through May, the town did do a food cycler pilot, which included 100 participants within town. Those people that did sign up, those 100 participants, they were able to purchase a subsidized food cycler unit, a household benchtop appliance, if you will, for recycling organic waste within their households. The municipality did subsidize the overall cost for participants to purchase the units to the tune of about $10,000 plus tax and shipping, which brought the overall cost of the units down to, I believe, $169.50 with HSC. So made it quite affordable with a subsidy from Food Cycler Science themselves and the municipality, with participants going out of pocket marginally at $169.50. So council obviously has interest in understanding what the results of the local pilot program were, and the report in front of you this evening does offer the results of the local pilot program, and it's going to be elaborated on here in a few minutes through Alex's presentation. So that's one part of the recommendation, is to accept the findings of the pilot program just as information for council, as well as there's a second recommendation in front of council this evening for consideration that, you know, we continue our partnership with Food Cycle Science going into 2023 budget deliberations. And Alex will talk a little bit about some additional funding that they've got from the federal government. So they were a finalist in the program that they applied for through the federal government, and they were awarded some additional funds for expansion of their program. And Food Cycle Science did reach out to Public Works to see if there would be interest in expanding the program. So that's part of the presentation here this evening as well. Obviously, we know that, you know, there's issues with our landfills reaching their capacity. We know there's issues with greenhouse gas emissions. We know that there's a tremendous amount of food waste that is generated not only locally, but provincially and federally from every household in the province and or the country. And it does continue to present issues from our, you know, when we're looking at diverting waste from our land stream and adding to greenhouse gas emissions. So I think this is a really, really great initiative that Food Cycle Science has come up with this unit that, you know, it's not much bigger than a coffee maker, if you will, that sits on your countertop, and you know, the 100 participants, and not to steal thunder from Alex, but on average, the average household that participated, they cycled the units about 4 times throughout the week, and which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, and I showed this, I think at my first presentation for Food Cycle Science, this small jar of I guess recycled organic waste, you know, to the you know, this would have been your orange peels and your banana peels and food scraps and whatnot that went into the Food Cycle Science. And when you run that unit, this is what you can expect to get from it, which is fully compostable, can be added to your household plants, if you will, as compost, or your exterior gardens or what have you. So it does take a rather bulky amount of waste and transforms it into what I just showed you in the jar. So with that said, I'm not gonna talk a whole lot about the results of the pilot program, because it's pretty well the nuts and bolts, if you will, of Alex's presentation. So with that said, I will introduce Alex Heyman from Food Cycle Science to go through his presentation. So he'll share his screen, and then we'll, through the chair, we'd be happy to take any questions at the end of the short presentation. Alex, the floor is yours.
Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you for welcoming me back to present to you virtually about the results of the pilot program. As a quick reminder, I'm here from Food Cycle Science. We're a Canadian company based just down the street in Ottawa, and I had the pleasure of visiting your municipal office a few months ago to get the program started. We're now working with 42 municipalities across the country on food waste diversion solutions. And as Paul mentioned, we've received additional funding from the federal government with the direction to scale up these programs through the Impact Canada partnership. As Paul mentioned as well, we ran the pilot program with 100 participants. It was managed by Paul and Vanessa, who did a wonderful job. So thank you very much, Paul and Vanessa. We got the 100 units out. They were tracked for 12 weeks and the survey was completed. I'll go through the results quite quickly, but happy to elaborate more at the end. Of the 100 participants, we got 92% of the surveys back, which is, I think, an all-time high in the 42 projects this far. So great job to your residents for being very diligent with their record keeping. Most of them indicated that greenhouse gas reduction and waste reduction is very important to them, with about 8.7 and 9.3 weighting out of 10 given to those two items. And about 70% of the food waste right now going into the garbage, with a good portion of residents also doing some seasonal composting. When asked about why some residents don't backyard compost right now, some common reasons listed were concerns about bears, odors, or perhaps not knowing how to compost. Not having enough space was another issue listed as well. In terms of usage, we saw about 4 cycles per week on average, which is equivalent to about 210 kilograms of food waste per household per year. And that's equivalent to preventing about 42 metric tons of CO2 equivalent from food waste decomposing in the landfill. Something interesting we found is having the device also motivated residents to waste less food in the first place. So seeing all your food waste go into that small bucket made people more aware of how much they're buying, how much they're wasting, and ultimately reduced food waste at the source, which is an even better outcome than just recycling it. In terms of reduction of waste, about 75% saw a reduction of 1 bag or more of garbage per month, with a pretty good amount of almost 30% seeing 2 bags or more reduced per month. So this is some significant amounts of net new diversion taking place. No residents really reported seeing any increase in electricity usage, as the hydro usage from the food cycler is relatively minimal or acceptable to residents, which is great. Most residents also think their friends and neighbors would be interested in participating in a similar program if one was launched in the future. And about 93% would recommend the food cycler to others. All these results so far are very consistent with what we're seeing in other communities, both regarding the amount of food waste diverted and the results coming back from the project. About 60% thought the food cycler was a good size for their household, though quite a few thought it was too small. We are launching a new model later this year that has a larger capacity, which should help with those residents that have larger households. And typically it was households with maybe kids or more people that were finding the capacity of the device a little bit small. Great to see that 100% are going to keep using the food cycler after the pilot. So you'll probably get a good return on your municipal investment based on that usage continuing. And we had an overall rating of 4.5 out of 5 stars for the overall project. And again, a lot of that credit should go to Paul and Vanessa for running a great program. When polled about what type of price most residents would pay if the municipality were to continue to offer this technology, most cited somewhere around $150 to $250, which indicates that some kind of subsidization would still be necessary. And in terms of comments, maybe in the interest of time, I'll let any members of the committee read this after the fact, but had a lot of positive comments around the practicality of having a food cycler in winter when backyard composting is more challenging, and it being useful for people living in multi-residential units. Some other comments of showing friends about it, thinking it might be expensive, but enjoying it once they got started using the device. Lastly, would welcome any feedback from the committee on the overall program. And if you're satisfied with the results, we'd welcome the opportunity to work further with Paul and Vanessa on developing an expansion to the program in the future. Thank you very much for your time, and I'd welcome any questions.
Councillor McGuire, go ahead.
Madam Chair, and thanks, Alex, Paul, Vanessa. This is a really cool tool to add to my kitchen. As somebody who lives alone, I don't have enough waste to get a composter warm and going, but this gets it to that point. You can put it in the garden and let it break down from there. My parents had one. They ran it every day, sometimes twice a day. So the bigger units definitely would be great for them. And one issue I noticed with it is sometimes the screw in the bottom would come loose after a lot of cycles, and I'd love to see one with a heavy duty grinder, like a garburator, to get the rest of the stuff that we can't put into it yet in there. One question I've got that it's kind of awkward, but what's our business case for single sourcing this one? Like, I know there's a lot of these products on the market. We've gone through this trial. How does that work, and is there any liabilities if we keep going forward like this without putting it out for tender or anything?
Go ahead, Director McMahon.
Yeah, so through the chair, to answer Councillor McGuire's question. So you're talking about the procurement bylaw. So I mean, that's a bylaw of council, and that's something that council could make an exemption, if you will, to sole source these units. It's been done before with multiple different contracts that we've put out. So that would be at council's discretion to continue the partnership solely with food cycle science. And perhaps, Alex, you can maybe perhaps talk about the continuation of your funding that you've received through the federal government and what that means with your participating municipalities that you're partnered with currently for expansion of the program. Through the chair, obviously.
Yes, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'd say through the Federal Impact Canada program, we have received additional funds, and all our partners that participated in the pilot would have a right of first refusal at using those funds for an expansion. That being said, with other municipalities, we have gone through formal procurement processes and welcome that opportunity. We've also recently joined the canoe procurement platform, if your municipality uses that, which is a group buying tool for municipalities in Ontario. And we were the successful proponent for this category through that competitive process. So that could be another way to look at the procurement, but we'd of course defer to staff on what the best approach would be to move forward if there was interest.
Councillor Alford, go ahead.
I think this has been a wonderfully successful pilot program, and I would certainly support that we, as staff has recommended, that we consider a continued partnership with food cycle science and present that at budget deliberations. I mean, there's no arguing with the success of this, and I think probably all of us have heard from people who were using it. I certainly did. And the most often comment I received was, well, like, I'm sorry, I didn't get one. So I think there is the potential for a marketplace out there. And I think we should keep going down this road. The procurement stuff, Paul and staff will have to sort that all out if necessary, and bring us a recommendation, but that we should keep going. Yes, I agree.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. We should continue down this road. Anything to avoid the dreaded green box program where organics sit in our garages and attract vermin and aren't used probably. So at a cost to us. So there's got to be a way to find a solution other than that before we're told that we have to have that and we don't want to have that. And I think this is a great solution to that.
Mayor Panko?
Yes, I'm really pleased with the program. Director McMahon, want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up until I.
Yeah, I wanted Alex to perhaps just elaborate a little bit on the, the new larger, better units that they have that will be coming out later in the year, because he provided some information to me a week or so ago, and I was drafting the report that I found to be quite alarming and interesting. So Alex, I'm talking about those bones that can go into the units to be composted.
Sure, and to Councillor McGuire's point around being able to process, larger bones and other hard materials like other technologies like a garburator, we've taken a lot of feedback from residents in these pilot programs. The two top pieces of feedback have been make it bigger and make it more robust. And so we've done both those things. The new unit, the capacity increases from 2 liters to 5 liters of food waste per cycle. And the new grinding mechanism enables you to process anything as large as a big T-bone steak, such that it's really simple. Anything that's kind of compostable and formerly edible can be put through the machine, no problem. So we think that unit will be much more durable and longer lasting, and ultimately robust enough to be fit for purpose for a municipal project.
I'd just like to add, my husband and I had one. We still have it. We still use it every day. And before that, I had gone to REAL's environmental action explanation. I had to set your compost site up, and we had one, and we still have it, although now we're not using it very often. But this little thing just completely transformed the way we do things. And that cup that you showed us, the amount, we did it twice a day, and everything then was just put in the garden. So yeah, no, I can't say enough about it. Great invention. Peter, go ahead, Councillor McKenna.
Madam Chair, thank you. I think Mayor Panko stepped back when Director McMahon wanted to speak. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. No, I won't repeat what's been said, but I mean, the results speak for itself, and I'm really grateful we had the participants who one, stepped up to purchase, and two, followed the track the results. And for every reason, I'd love to see this program continue. The only concern I guess I've got, and maybe Alice can answer, and maybe it's not a concern, but just longevity and troubleshooting and different models, reliability, life cycle, things like that. I mean, it's been great to get this out. We've only about 2% of our households which have done this, so we've got all kinds of runway to expand this in the community. But I want to make sure we've got units that are, if you look at, I guess, the life cycle, if it lasts 5 years, it's going to pay for itself essentially with our commitment. Not to mention the greenhouse gas savings and what we're saving overall, but just Alex's feedback on really how reliable these are, and are they having any troubles with units?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. What we've been seeing with other municipalities that have chosen to expand the program is really a focus on the total lifetime cost of the program and warranty for the units. So we've been offering warranties as long as 7 years for municipally purchased units, and also looking at things like having bulk filter refill stations to take away the burden of residents having to purchase their own filters out of pocket. So I think depending, on the scale that you wanted to move forward, we can start looking into, through Paul and his team, what requirements would be for the town and what the business case would be, and how we get to that longevity and into a more formal municipal program. So definitely hear you on those concerns, and we look forward to working with staff to try and work those into a proposal to the town.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Love to see this continue and grow.
Go ahead, McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the staff recommendation, the first one, and the second one refers to a report. Staff will investigate and come back with a report. So at that time, we'd certainly have another opportunity we're not, so we could make a further discussion. And to the results, I'm very impressed. Although if you were to ask me, would I buy one if you could get subsidy, the question was a little bit, the questions were a little bit biased. It's like asking me, would you prefer to go to an open bar or pay bar? And I'm going to say open bar. And you're saying, would you buy one? Would you rather have it subsidized? Well, of course I would. So I also think the proliferation of these tools will bring down the price over time, and competition will as well. Is there a target for the greater community? Do you see these in 50% of the homes, 60% of the homes? What is that target? Does anybody, will that come out in the report? Sorry, I threw a lot at you there.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McKenna. Yeah, so that's something that we would come back to council with the business model, business case locally here for the town of Smith Falls. I think ideally, you know, with the 93 response from the 93% response that we had from participants that actually completed the survey does show that there is local interest, not only in acquiring a subsidized unit, but in that they're vested in the process of going through the pilot. They're vested in, you know, documenting their findings for their own household, which I think is great. You know, it'd be really nice to think that, you know, we could have one of these units in every household in Smith Falls. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be reality, but it'd be very, 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 very tough to try to administer something like that. But in as many households as we can possibly get them into, I think would be a huge success, because quite frankly, I mean, even with the green bin program, as Councillor Brennan spoke to earlier, I wouldn't think you'd have 100% participation anyways. You're still going to have those that just simply throw their waste out in their garbage on a weekly basis. But when I just wanted to mention as well, when we're talking about the units themselves and the longevity of the units, Alex, you had mentioned a week or two ago about the new units being a little more modular in the sense that, you know, they're engineered in such a way that the average layman can easily swap out, change out those components that perhaps maybe consumable wouldn't be the right word, but maybe break down a little bit quicker, that you've engineered it in such a way that you send them a replacement part, whatever that part is, and they can easily enough change that within their own household as opposed to sending the units away. So I don't know if you wanted to comment a little bit more on, you know, the engineering of the new units themselves.
Yeah, maybe just very briefly, we have focused on a modular design. That means the appliances can be repaired very easily versus replaced when they break down. And it's through that system that we're able to offer these longer warranties in a cost-effective manner. So it all kind of goes together to make a longer lasting product for our municipal market.
Good. And just on your comment about it coming back, Director McMunn, we have it as a miscellaneous motion this evening on council meeting.
Yeah, okay? So we will bring back, yes.
Okay, so that'll be coming forward in our next meeting at council. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. It was nice meeting you. And again, you know, this is a great invention. And I think I look forward to more of us being able to use it.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. And we'll look forward to working with Paul and his team on next steps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next priority issue, we're going to go back to the Municipal Asset Management Planning Provincial Legislation Update Report 2022-121, and that's with Treasurer Casil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as previously reported to Council under OREG 588, every municipality is required to update their asset management plan for their core assets, which include water, wastewater, storm management, roads, and bridges on or before July 1st. That being said, the ministry has been advised that we wouldn't be reporting until this evening. The updated asset management plan must include life cycle activities inclusive of maintenance, which are under the operational budget, and those have been based on the past 2 years' actual cost, as well as a capital forecast and the associated cost for a 10-year period in order to maintain the current service. Every updated asset management prepared must be endorsed by council. Once approved, the updated plan must be posted online for public viewing and submitted to the Ministry of Infrastructure. Starting in 2023, these plans will be used to inform the OSIF funding allocations. The next deadline under this plan or under this legislation is July 1st, 2024, and it will include updates for all other asset categories. Adoption of this report does not result in any immediate financial implications. Any proposed life cycle costs, such as the forecasted capital projects, will be discussed during annual budget deliberations. It is important to note that the proposed capital reconstruction process projects align with the 2020 water and wastewater financial plans. For example, the 2023 draft budget will be inclusive of the reconstruction of Catherine Street. So in conclusion, this updated asset management plan is a guiding document that will need to be reviewed and updated if necessary every 5 years to ensure that all core assets are actively represented and accounted for. So with that, I'll pause and answer any questions. And Director McMunn is here if you had any technical questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Janet. I had to squeeze this one in on my lunch break today, but it was awesome. The maps were really great. It's neat to see. We can see our stormwater problem on the north side of town, where you've got the one green line and not very much service, and it's exciting, the opportunity I guess that brings, but it's a lot of work it'll take to do it. I have some questions on the backlog of assets. So some of the roads, they say the useful life 60-ish years, and then the age of them is 120 plus years. Am I understanding that correctly?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, there's estimated useful life and reporting year.
So the average age for the road is 62?
Yeah, and pipe and underground stuff. Like there's just such a discrepancy between the estimated useful life and the age of it. Is that what does that mean? Does it mean we could get more life out of them, or does it mean we've got a huge liability that needs to be fixed?
Well, the citywide uses the age as far as its condition rating. And I see Director McMunn has his hand up. Did you want to elaborate?
Go ahead, Director McMunn.
Yeah, Councillor McGuire, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the town does have a tremendous amount of liability with our aged infrastructure. So when we're talking about life expectancy for sewer, water, storm, roadways, much of our assets that we can either see in our roads or stuff that's under the ground that we can't see has well surpassed its useful life, and it's either it's met its end of life and or very, very close to it, and in a lot of cases it's exceeded. So we're somewhat on borrowed time, if you will. And I will state that my staff in the utilities and in the public works departments have been actively repairing many water main breaks around town to try to account for some of our unaccounted water loss within town, doing sewer lateral repairs. So yeah, we do have a lot of aged infrastructure in town for sure.
Thanks. Do we have a value for how much is past its useful life, the replacement value of the assets that have exceeded their useful life at this point?
So through the chair, the charts that were included give you what the percentage of that are in poor condition. So the items that are aged based on the condition, that would give you what's left on the value. So that chart has a dollar value attached to it, replacement cost.
So just percentage, because it's all a flat calculation anyway. Cool. There's very poor roads not on our list to 2030, and I'm wondering what's the plan for those? Where we've got the list of projects for until 2030 with Catherine Street going, but say for example, Elmsley Street North to Maisie Street, very poor, but I don't believe it's on the list, and I'm wondering when can those projects fit into the schedule?
Ed, Janet.
For the purpose of this update for the ministry, it is a 10-year forecast. And as we know, 2016, we forecasted a good majority of the ones that were on the priority forecast capital were completed, but that will change as we go forward. So the requirement was a 10-year forecast.
Okay. So it's just that they're not going to be done in the next 10 years and they'll continue to be very poor.
Well, again, this is subject to potential grant successful applications could help us along further than what we projected here too.
Okay. So the bridges are a good news story. The roads and the water assets, not so much. Okay. Thanks.
Mayor Panko, go ahead.
Well, I share Councillor McGuire's, I guess, anxiety here when we start looking at this is a 10-year forecast, and in that 10 years, we've got about $60 million worth of work in today's dollars, I assume, just over the next decade, and that will still leave a considerable amount of work to come in decades from now. When we look at 70% of our water mains are poor, very poor. 91% of our combined sewers are poor, very poor. And again, this is, we know it's very aged infrastructure, and as much as I think we've made some major strides in recent years, we've got a lot of kilometers of pipe on the ground that we need to address. And I mean, we don't want to do a road surface on a project that's going to have pipes under consideration or replacement within the following years. I mean, I know staff are doing a great job of pulling all this stuff together, making sure that we address areas of the highest priority. But it's a monumental task, and it's a task that will probably take everybody here beyond their working career, beyond their term on council to address, and we will need considerable support from the upper tiers. I mean, separating combined sewers in this end of town, as much as we ideal from an environmental standpoint, from a wastewater standpoint, to get all this looked after, especially with the effects of climate change coming and the potential for significant storms from time to time that may go beyond the capacity of what we have now. But realistically speaking, it's a monumental task that we won't be able to look after in the next decade. But I appreciate the work. I think the insight is incredibly important. And as elected officials, we need to understand the challenges ahead of us. And this asset management plan does provide that clarity.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in full support of the staff recommendation and appreciate it. As the mayor just said, this is our, no pun intended, our roadmap forward. It's also critical, I think, for the public to understand what the asset management plan, how it's structured and what it means over the next number of years. And when whoever's in our seats in the next 4 years will have to answer those questions about why this street's getting repaired and not that one. And so anyways, I think it's excellent. I did have a question on the calculations used to estimate the costs for capital investments. When we break them out into those 5 categories, stormwater, wastewater, roads, bridges, and then there's a cost to replace them at the end of life, is that as if you were doing that just that road, or is it take into account, because you can see the economies of scale if you're replacing a road and it also needs water and stormwater, and so you do it at once, or so I don't know if I'm being clear, but you've got costs for replacing all these in distinct categories, but when you put them together, would those costs not come down if you did everything at once? Is there another set of books that says, gee, that's if you did them by themselves? If you do them together, it's much more cost effective.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, I can take that one, Janet. Yeah, so Councillor McKenna, yeah, I believe there's some perceived economies of scale when we're talking about a reconstruction project, where we're going to dovetail roadway reconstruction with all the underground sewer, water, and storm replacement. but like with the asset management plan itself, I mean, we don't have a, you know, we're not 100% certain on what market conditions in any given year are going to suggest replacement costs to be. I mean, we base the asset management projections on annual CPI adjustments, and that's done through our financial software. And unfortunately, our financial software, that's kind of the best guess we have going forward. But I think, like was mentioned before, it is important for the community as a whole to understand that, you know, that this is a living document. It's not written in stone in terms of we're going to do this street this year, we're going to do this street next year. There's a tremendous amount of variables that come into play, and this is where staff have to, you know, when we're looking at what our capital investment is going to be on any given year and the different funding streams that we have coming in, we have to be smart, obviously, with our money and to pick the right project, you know, that meets the annual projections for what we have for taxation, what we have for OCIF funding, what we have for federal gas tax, et cetera, and to develop a plan on an annual basis that fits that funding strategy. I mean, the funding strategy is one thing, but I think we're going to be in a position going forward where we have to look at, you know, increasing our debt in town here, borrowing funds, and I think Janet can agree with that. That, you know, I wouldn't say we're in crisis state. I don't want to scare anybody, but we do have a tremendous amount of infrastructure that does need to be replaced, and it's important for the community to understand that when we're looking at increasing taxes on any given year. And I know that's not something that's ever popular for council, but it is unfortunately a reality going forward. Because we do have a lot of catch up to do.
Thank you. I remain supportive of the plan and the recommendation. And I suspect that most small towns in Eastern Ontario are in the same situation as we are.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Go ahead.
I think Councillor Alford had her hand up.
I thought you had yours up with Councillor McKenna, sorry.
Madam Chair, I'm going to probably reinforce some things that my colleagues have already said. We're all aware, I'm very supportive of the asset management plan. Fortunately, we took some bites out of our infrastructure problems in redoing what we have so far. But this is the story, and I think, I'm not sure who said it, this is the story everywhere. This is the story with every town that was built in the last 100 years. We are not this is not a surprise at all to anyone. I think I can't remember what the ungodly number was across Canada of what the infrastructure deficit is, but it's something that will take decades, generations to fix. Maybe we'll get lucky and do it sooner, but then as soon as we get those done, we have to start over. So this is not new or unique to Smiths Falls. Paul touched on it too. Many of the decisions on items on the asset management plan are prioritized because, and this is very important for people to understand, are prioritized because there is some money available from either level of government in order to complete them. There is a certain science and analysis involved in an asset management plan, but there's also a bit of an art to position projects that can be funded or partially funded by other levels of government and don't land all on our own taxpayers. So I am very supportive of moving forward with the asset management plan.
Yeah, thank you. And this is time sensitive, as I see, and we need to get this passed tonight. Yeah, I mean, we're not alone, obviously, and you know, we're one of 400 municipalities in Ontario are probably facing the same thing. And I think the advantage that we have is that we are growing, and we are in a good position, in my opinion. The other part of what I was going to say was, and you know, when we talk about, I don't know, 60 some kilometers of streets, and each one of us could pick one street out and say, well, we've got to do something here, we got to do something there. The other thing is community priorities. So we've got to listen to the taxpayers and listen to them as well, because we can't do them all at once, obviously, and we can just pick away at them. And in terms of upper tier funding, that there is money there. We have gas tax, the OCIF, that's there. It's up to us to decide where we're going to put it. And so let's get this in, and the province and the feds can look at it and say, yep, you're like everybody else, and you need help, and of course they're going to help us. We have to prioritize what we want done first. So I just congratulate staff for putting this together. It's a huge undertaking, absolutely huge. When you look at all those attachments, and every street is prioritized, and you know, I looked at all the different streets, and the ones that I thought should be done, well, maybe not, but you know, everyone wants their streets done, and that's core services that municipality and we as councillors provide and prioritize. So thanks for the work, and let's get this through.
Well said. I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you, Janet and Paul, for your reports and your input tonight. That's going to be coming on council as well at our next meeting. We've deferred the Confederation Bridge Report 8.7. So our next priority issue is 8.8, and that's the Russell Street Parquet Mural, Award of Contract Report 2022-123 with Manager of Economic Development and Tourism, Julia Crowder. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to committee, the report before you is requesting that council pass a bylaw to authorize mayor and council to execute a service agreement with Dominic Laportier for the design, installation, and maintenance of the Russell Street Artscape Parquet Mural project. As reported earlier, the Parquet project is funded through a provincial grant, the My Main Street Activator Program, in partnership with the DBA, and we received $98,000 in order to create the parquet, which includes the cost and installation of a mural. Staff went to request for proposal to find and award the contract. We received 5 submissions. The evaluation committee did an initial evaluation and then put the concepts up to the public for voting. The voting was open for 1 week, and it received 1,304 survey responses. So a really great response to the survey. The public feedback was very positive. Analysis and options. The 5 submissions received range from 13,000 to 30,000. Each design was uniquely different. However, all the submissions were similar in materials, application, installation timeline, and maintenance. And the evaluation criteria for the evaluation committee was included in the report, as well as the survey results from the public consultation. So staff is recommending that a contract be awarded for Dominic. He received the highest scores both from the evaluation committee and the public. They felt that he could deliver the best final design product based on his skills, experience, past work, submitted concept design, and the high quality materials. His quote for the work came in the middle and was one of the lowest, being $15,372.61. So the recommended motion is that council award the contract for the mural installation to Dominic in the amount of $15,000, $15,372.61, which includes HST, which is fully funded through the My Main Street grant. And so just a quick update on the project as well. The groundwork for the mural, which is being completed by Kavanaugh, was supposed to be started this week, and the installation of the mural is scheduled for September 13th or 14th. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes. Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. How much is the concept going to resemble the finished product, Julia?
Sorry, say that again.
Like, is the concept pretty much what we're going to see as the finished product, or will it be tweaks or changes?
So this concept that was provided as part of the report is actually a revised concept based on community input, which was forwarded to Dominic.
Okay, I'd love to see it revised a bit more. I think there's a lot more to Smith Falls than trains and flowers. When I see an oil train, I think I whack my gut dick, and it's not a good association. I don't want to see an oil train downtown unless CP's contributing to their billboard. To me anyway, I don't know. So yeah, so I'm not sure if there's room for more refinement. I'd love to see it, some of the other options incorporated more of the past, present, future, in my opinion. And to me, this one's just a big billboard for a CP rail train. So I appreciate the feedback, but that's where I'm at with it.
Okay, I think I saw, was it Councillor Alfred? Did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't know in our 4 years of being on council that we've ever seen that kind of response to, I think, any question we've asked. So I am enthusiastically and pleasantly surprised by that level of feedback from the public. I enthusiastically support Ms. Crowder's recommendation. And in terms of Councillor McGuire's comments, in fact, all insignia to do with any railroad in particular was flagged and taken it off. That came through public comment, I believe. It is and was always intended to be a vibrant, colorful piece, and while it may not appeal to Councillor McGuire's sensibilities, I am satisfied and happy that it got the response it did from the public. So in this particular case, I have no qualms about moving forward with the recommendation by staff.
Other comments? Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although, everybody's an art critic, I'm included in that, but I trust the process. I trust the way that it was developed and the committee, and I congratulate the BIA and really appreciate the funding and the work of staff and volunteers. And it is hard to argue with people responded well to this particular artist and his concepts, and I'll go along with it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm kind of indifferent to all of the proposals. I'm glad to see that we've had so much interest in participating in the ranking. So if this is what the community wants, that's great. I'm supportive of that. Julia, does CP know that we're using their logo? That would be my only concern, is that if we go to the expense of putting this mural together only to get a cease and desist order from CP, that would be super unfortunate.
So we're not actually using the CP logo. That has been removed from this final design. So the initial design that was sent out to the public did have the CP on it, but based on public feedback and just comments in general from the committee, we removed the CP logo.
Anyone else? Mayor Panko?
Yeah, I also respect the public process that got us to where we are now. To Councillor McGuire's point, I prefer to see maybe box cars at the end of this train rather than cars that are hauling bitumen or oil, whatever it may be. And the thought would simply be, I respect it's the way the water tower looks now as a historic water tower, but of course our logo is different now. And it may look maybe nice to have our new logo, a new brand on there versus the old one. But again, I'll respect the public process.
Councillor McGuire, you had another thought before we leave this?
Yeah, I agree with Mayor Panko's comments and just looking for consensus on getting rid of those oil cars. And hey, I'd say if CP would give us some money to pay for it, put their logo on it, and let's get the pavers in there. Anyway.
Councillor McKenna, or sorry, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I think Councillor McKenna said it best. Everyone's an art critic, and it's pretty subjective stuff. Does it look good? Yeah, it looks good. And you know, we can hang our hat on the number of responses we got back on it. So I'm sure I'm going to hear it from people that it looks ugly, and then maybe some other people will like it. But the fact of the matter is we got a great grant for this, and it's going to look a heck of a lot better than it does right now, that side of that building.
I think there's consensus to move this forward tonight, so it will be on our council agenda. And I love that the water tower is in it.
And through you, Madam Chair.
I do agree with the mayor that I kind of looked at the logo and thought, oh, I kind of wish it was the logo that's there now.
Through you, Madam Chair, I can definitely take those comments back to Dominic and ask him to revise the train cars and the logo on the water tower. He's pretty good at making the changes, and those are very small, so I can definitely put that request to him. And I just wanted to remind council as well that this is really the launching point and opportunity for the new public arts program that we're currently developing. So there's going to be opportunities to, you know, reference more cultural and heritage aspects of our community and really brighten our town in a number of other locations. So I'm really excited for this. So thank you.
But the only thing I would add too that I'm very, very impressed with is that when I read your report, it indicates that the paint they're using now on murals lasts, I guess, very, very long. The problem we've had in the past is and all of us remember these, we've had murals before that were beautiful, but only lasted a few years. And the remnants of it are haunting because you remember it as it should be. And it's, you know, they're faded and looking very poor. So I was pleased to see that there's been an improvement in that sort of thing. Looking forward to seeing it. Okay, thank you. Our last priority issue this afternoon is, there's two more. Website redevelopment award of contract report. And again, that's with you, Julia. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I was just
That's okay.
Pulling up the report. So the report before you tonight is requesting that council pass a bylaw to authorize mayor and clerk to execute a service agreement with GHD Digital Solutions, also known as eSolutions Group, for the design, hosting, and ongoing support of our new town website. The town's first website was developed in 2006, and then since then there's been a few updates and iterations, the last one being a tourism microsite added earlier in 2001. The town also moved forward with a public engagement site, Speak Up Smith Falls, in an effort to connect and seek feedback from residents and visitors on various municipal projects. Although the current website is visually appealing, it is limited in its functionality, available features, and continues to present challenges with the ease of use for both staff and users. So as a result of that, we went out to tender with a request for proposal, which was issued August 5th. The proposal generated 5 proposal submissions, and I've outlined what the criteria was, as well as a summary of the results of that bid, being GDH or eSolutions Group scoring high. The evaluation team felt that they provided the best solution with the best functionality and best options, both for staff and for the general public, at a price point that was in line with the budget, as well as in line with other solutions that were provided. So I've outlined those costs. So the initial price would be $44,658, and then annual ongoing costs of $22,441. So I just wanted to note to council that currently we are paying about $20,000 for our current website, and that, as well as Bang the Table. And the idea would be that we would no longer need Bang the Table as part of the new website, because we'd be able to facilitate the same public engagement and look that Speak Up Smith Falls and Bang the Table currently offers. So there would be an opportunity to offset costs there, as well as our GoDaddy hosting package, which is way more than what we currently need, and that's about $4,600, as well as the current website hosting and maintenance annual cost of $7,362. So it's about $20,000. With the new website, we'd also be able to get rid of some other tools that we're using. So Sprout, for instance, is used to post on social media, which with the new website will have a feature for. We can automatically post on the website and it will be pushed out to our social media accounts, as well as SurveyMonkey, which we use for online surveys and to get information and public feedback. So altogether, that's about $22,000, which is the cost of the annual hosting that's being presented. So we provided 3 different options for council. Option number 1 is the recommended option, which does not include the citizen portal. So staff felt that the citizen portal wasn't needed. Currently, with the website being proposed, you can subscribe to individual pages. The citizen portal through GHD is not an app per se. You can't download it on your phone. You're not getting updates and notifications on your phone. What it is a subsequent website that uses tiles, which can be customized based on the user's preferences, but the notifications are still coming through email rather than through phone pushes and text messages. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments from council.
Councillor McBrennan, I saw your hand up right away.
Yeah, sooner the better. I'm really, I'm not tech savvy or anything like that, but I'm really just dismayed and disappointed that our website's been down for, what is it, close to a month now. And I'm like, you know, what's going on here? And I don't know. And you explained it earlier in your reports, which I appreciate, but the sooner the better we get this done. I just wanted to ask, so we also are going to have an eScribe feature for our meetings, and that will be attached to this website, correct?
Yeah, we've talked to the solution provider, and they actually use eScribe with a number of other municipalities, and it will be integrated right into our calendar. So that's going to make it really easy for staff to upload the documents, and it will automatically be uploaded to the council calendar.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I support your recommendation. Maybe you could enlighten me. This particular company, I assume, does other municipalities?
They actually design and host websites for hundreds of municipal websites. They're an industry standard, and they are from Ontario. So they're actually out of Waterloo, and they have an office in Ottawa. And
yeah, I support. Yeah, great.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Crowder. It's a good report. Could you comment on there's a couple of lines on the functionality of the new proposed website. How future-proof is it? Like, what's the shelf life, 2 or 3 years? Because I see the municipality, like many others, of modernizing our digital services to a great extent over the next 4 or 5 years. And will we outgrow this website in 2 years or 3 years, or do you have a sense of how long we can get out of this?
so I've actually working in other municipalities. This will be my 3rd iteration with GDH for website design. And one of the municipalities that we started with over 10 years ago was Aurelia, and they're still currently using eSolutions as their website provider. This website will really last 10 years with a likely update in 3 to 5 if any new options come available that we would like to take advantage of, and any updates to products. But as part of the contract, we can negotiate with the vendor to include any upgrades to any modules to be free and included as part of that contract. We do have some options with regards to contracts. We can do annual contracts. We could do a 3 to 5 year contract. So staff is still kind of negotiating that and figuring out what the best option is in terms of contract length.
So thank you. I guess my question is if Aurelia didn't upgrade their digital, if they didn't modernize their whole infrastructure around IT, then the website would be fine. But if they've totally upgraded everything and they're still using it, I guess is my question. It's resilient enough that it will keep up with us. I'd like to think we can get ahead of it.
Sorry, my apologies to that.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, the vendor actually has their own CMS system, so content management system that they've created 20 years ago. So it's not hosted on the town server. It's on a completely different server that's hosted by the company itself.
Thank you.
Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Julia. It's exciting to see this. I've been worried about our website since I got onto council because it's at HTTP, and the security protocols have always been a huge red flag that we've been dealing with. So it's exciting. I'm interested in like GHD is a big multinational engineering firm doing all kinds of work. I'm wondering what kind of guarantees do we have in the contract if they decide to divest of the e-solutions part of the business, or they're required by another firm? What kind of continuity are we guaranteed, or what securities do we have there?
So eSolutions actually was its own entity, and they've now amalgamated with GHD for that product support. So it's been pretty seamless with that amalgamation.
Okay, we've tried a smaller group. I'm willing to go with a bigger group because the smaller group hasn't worked. With the e-meeting software, it's exciting to see that'll be integrated. Is there anything that we'll have to do training or in-house with staff to start getting the full functionality out of that software, or is that part of this contract?
It is part of the contract. So full training session will be provided to staff who will be allocated as content writers, as well as there's some administration training for the communications coordinator and our IT specialist who will manage the back end of the website. But we'll, as staff, we have full control of our website, so we're able to update and change any particular items on the website ourselves. So we have full functionality, and it's really an easy solution for staff to use. It's almost like updating a web page using a Word document to give some perspective on how easy it is to actually update and maintain the content.
That's great. I'm really interested in the hosting. Is it going to be on servers at GHD? Is it going to be cloud-based? How are the security updates going to work, and how are the backups going to happen?
Yep. So again, they have their own CMS system and servers, which are in Canada. So it'll be completely hosted on their servers. And so our support and maintenance package includes updates for free. Well, not for free because we're paying the annual cost to do that. And they are regular, and we have 24-hour support with them. So if there is a major issue or malfunction with the website, we call them up and they get it fixed within a few hours. Some of the, the smaller changes or questions or things from staff, like if we're having, new staff come on and they have questions, then they're available by email and through their support portal as well, usually within a day or two to correct or answer any questions that we have.
Okay, great. I'd love to get more information after the meeting on the hosting, just for my understanding and that peace of mind. And then the content management system's another part I have questions on. Going with the WordPress is like a Windows where it's industry standard. I'm wondering who owns the software for this I create, and what more information on that, just to know how much longevity we're going to get out of it.
Yeah, so eSolutions owns that product. They developed and manage and support and own that product. So it's completely an integrated system.
Okay, I'd love to get some information on what kind of languages that's using in the back end, because just it's risky if eSolutions goes under or something happens there and we're not using a Windows and that content management system is no longer supported. There's definitely a risk there. I think it's mitigated with the fact that so many people are using this, but it's still more niche than some of the other options out there. I find the Aurelia website's really cluttered, so I hope we can really focus our content and make it accessible. But overall, yeah, really excited to see this move forward. So thank you.
Okay, And that this is also going to be on our agenda in a few minutes at council meeting. So thank you, Julia. Our last priority issue this afternoon, or tonight, I guess I should say, is 8.10 Procedural Bylaw Update Report 2022-118 with Director Costello. Welcome.
Thank you. Council has received the report 2022-118. There's 2 items this evening looking for direction on. The first, we've provided the schedules that will be included in the procedural bylaw, and they have been attached. And I've listed in the report whether it's a new policy or an amending policy. So the first one that we're looking at including is new. It's a petition policy, and that was included in your agenda package. The second, which is in existence since 2018, there's no changes to it, is the staff council relations policy. As well, the town's employment bylaw, which is for the staff, also has this policy adopted to it in its appendices. The motions is more of a reference guide. It's not new. When we do some training, we'll go delve into motions. Delegation information, this is one that Councillor Alfred wanted some discussion on about how we deal with delegations. So I did provide a bit of a survey I did with other municipalities to see how they deal with delegations. The declaration form that is existing, so there's no changes to it. As well, the inaugural meeting agenda we've included as an appendix C, and that is new. The other item that council wanted to look into was the in-camera, how we dealt with in-camera. I'm happy to report I did talk to our Deputy Clerk Bennett, did some research with eScribe. They do have a portal for in-camera, which would give all the elected officials or committee members access to confidential reports. They would be put there, and it would all be a passcode for you to get into them. So that would be the way that in the future that we would deal with in-camera reports, as well as minutes to be adopted. So that's all within the eScribe portal, and that's all within the package that we have purchased from eScribe. So I guess for discussion tonight, I'm looking for any discussion that council may want to have on how we handle delegations. In the survey, I don't think we're far off from how a lot of municipalities handle delegations. But if there was any tidbits in there that you've read that you would like to see included, we can certainly have a chat about that. But I think unless anybody has any major questions with the appendices, that the main item would be the discussion on how we handle delegations.
Go ahead, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a great report, Director Costello. I appreciate it. And I did have a question on the delegations. If you look at 8.6.7, it refers to no delegation shall speak to a matter that is not within the jurisdiction of the municipality. And I needed 2 things. One, to clarify jurisdiction, literal jurisdiction, or the governance jurisdiction that we preside over. And secondly, it does go on to say that there can be some exceptions to that in consultation with the mayor and staff. I just think of how many delegations if we hear about Parkinson's disease or Orange Shirt Day to respect our Indigenous. So many of these things aren't under the jurisdiction of the municipality, and yet I hope we still want to hear from those. So I guess I just wanted to open it up a little bit and not make it so limiting. Maybe that was there before. So is it 2 questions? Is it the jurisdiction of the town of Smith Falls or the governance work of council?
My own personal take on that clause would be things that are within the governance of Smith Falls, that things are within the realm of you as elected officials to control. Things like that we get circulated on that I like for the federal government per se, but it'd be more things that you would deal with that as a local municipality or local government that you have some say over, some control over. So that would definitely not stop our local Alzheimer's group or the different groups that come to committee to give council updates. That wouldn't stop them at all. That would be that's my interpretation of that clause,
Right.
but I'm happy to take any suggestions and maybe firm up that clause a bit more.
Councillor Dwyer?
Thanks. I still think there's a lot of confusion in the way this policy is written, but I think, Carrie, I think we're getting closer. So when I read this, I still see that we're talking about two separate things, but the language and naming seems to be interchangeable. So I think what we're talking about is the idea of delegations or delegates registering to speak to any item on the agenda, which would not include things like the Alzheimer's Society coming to talk about something in general terms that's happening within our community, whereas presentations are what would constitute kind of that community presentation. But when you read this policy, the process is still the same. So at this point, when I read this, Alzheimer's Society would not be welcome to come as a presentation because they are not addressing something specifically on the agenda. Up to 2 people could come as a delegation, but there's no distinction between whether or not that's in addition to those that are there as a presentation, which I would interpret to be how we have been conducting ourselves lately to allow for a presentation to occur upfront on the agenda before we get into the actionable items and discussion pieces for a committee of the whole. So like I said last time, I'm fine with the process that we have had to allow for presentations and even to allow for delegates to come, so long as they're speaking to something topical upfront at the beginning of the agenda. What I am not supportive of, because I think it dramatically breaks away from our practice to date, is to allow up to 2 delegates to be registered to speak to something on the agenda. So for example, tonight, if somebody wanted to come and speak about the mural, they could have filed a delegation request with the clerk's office up until yesterday to come tell us their opinion on the mural, which I don't think that that's something that we want to get into. I think if they have an opinion on the mural, they can certainly reach out to counselors. They can provide their opinions in writing, and we use Speak Up Smiths Falls. But if we adopt what's presented tonight in front of us, then that is exactly what we'd be facilitating, and I am not okay with that.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Councillor Alfred?
Yeah, I agree. We're getting closer, but I think the devil's in the details, as Councillor Dwyer has said. It has to be really clear what the rules are for both presentations and delegations. I can think of one instance that's happened to us. As an example, is we had a delegation and it was turned out to be purely an operational issue. And that is not within the role of council. They should have been turned away. If there was a complaint like that, then they can reach out to councillors to voice their opinions. But I agree with Councillor Dwyer. If we could just nail the language on this one. I do appreciate all of the comparators. There was a lot of those. And I don't think that we are far off. I think it works. It's the detail. To be perfectly 100% crystal clear in allowing delegations and or presentations. And of course we should continue with presentations because those things would be of community interest. Alzheimer's, Your Shirt Day, that kind of stuff. Those are community interest things. But no, I think we can I think, Carrie, with what Councillor Dwyer said, she's been very articulate in that. I think you could go back, take that note and nail it.
I agree.
For next steps, what I'd like to do for next steps and maybe wrap this up in a nice bow is bring forward a timeline to council for implementation, as well as passage bylaw, as well as the final copy of the bylaw for one final read through. If council concurs, that would be hopefully our final report. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's it. Well done, everyone.
Did Carrie not want something else? That was one thing.
The other, Councillor Alfred, was the in-camera procedures. But I think that may have ironed itself out because we have the eScribe portal that allows us to put up confidential reports that is password protected so that only people such as the elected officials would have access to those reports and minutes. So that issue, I think, ironed itself out quite naturally after we had a discussion with eScribe. And the better part of it is that it's already within our package. So it's not of any cost to us, any additional cost, I should say.
And Madam Chair, if I could.
Councillor Brennan. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, let Jay go.
Go, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think that's great on the in camera. Just to clarify, that means the report that is presented in camera will be provided to us prior to a meeting.
Correct.
I.e., I don't go to an in-camera meeting and have it presented and then talk about it and try to decide something. I can digest the report for a period of time.
Correct. It'll be posted with the
Perfect.
regular agenda items.
Yeah, good.
Councillor Alfred.
Just, I think Carrie got the direction that she wanted on the two items. And if there was any notes on any of the appendix, then we could just send those to you by
Sure.
email. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
The sooner the better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would ask for a motion for adjournment. With Councillor Dwyer, seconded Councillor Brennan, that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 7:56 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. All in favor? Nadine, what would you like us to just hold on while we get ready for the next meeting?
Sure, maybe we could just take a 5-minute break if that's what council wishes to get their agenda pulled up. I have emailed the agenda to you and sent you the appropriate person to move that motion. So if you just want to take a peek at that message, you'll have it there.
So you want me to read this first? Is that right? You want me to read who's doing these?
If we just want to take a 5-minute break, we've adjourned at 7:56 committee of the whole, and everyone can get their agenda and their motions ready. Is that okay? Oh, Councillor Alfred, I think you're muted.
Your Worship, I am not staying for the council meeting. I believe that I will begin my vacation in Wasaga starting now. Bye, guys.
Have fun.
Good luck. Thank you.
So if everyone saw that text I sent, as well as I emailed the agenda, because I know that some people can open up the Speak Up Smith Falls agenda on their computer. So if you just want to check your email.
Yeah. Nadine, can you print me a copy, please? I can't print here. My new computer is not hooked to the printer.
Sure. I'll pull it.
Someone second my two motions. Anybody willing to second my two motions, 7.2 and 8.1? Thank you, Peter.
Oh, just wait. I'll need to make sure I capture this. Just a second.
You want us to wait till you've got the paper, Sean?
Yeah, please. I just want to run across Nadine to get the.
I'll read it to you, Sean. I just want to get it done. That's all.
I'll be right back. I got 7.4, so anybody wants to do it.
I'm just gonna sit here and continue to fold laundry. Because honestly, otherwise,
Did you hear me?
I'm gonna be up until midnight.
I'll be right back.
Yeah,
we got through that
just-
last one, okay.
Jay, your mic is not muted. Just as a heads up. Nadine, can you mute Jay? I'm a little afraid that he is not muted.
See if we can.
He's
Oh,
muted
he
now.
is. Yeah, he's muted.
Wait. Okay, perfect.
So Nadine, with Wendy gone, I need someone for 7.1.
Oh, sorry. 7.1 is Councillor McGuire. 7.2 is Councillor Allen.
2.
And I'm Peter, seconded me, Sean.
Okay, back, sorry. Okay, so 7.1, Chris, you the seconder?
Who wants the website?
I can.
Awesome.
Okay, 7.2, Lorraine is moving it, seconded by
Councillor McKenna.
Peter, okay. Excuse me.
7.3 is with Councillor McKenna.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay, as long as he knows.
Yeah, I sent it out by text. 7.4 is with Councillor Brennan.
Oh, I don't have a 7.4. 7.3.
Who's got 7.4?
You didn't print the full agenda?
No, didn't print.
You do. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
John, do you want me to text it to you? I'm on my computer, so I can quickly text the copy and paste of the resolution.
Here, I have it right here. I'll print it again. I don't know why I didn't print a second page.
So 7.4 is which? That's
7.4 is the, with Councillor Brennan, that's the lifting of holding bylaw.
28 chambers.
Yeah.
That's Lorraine, right?
No,
Oh,
I think that's you, Jay.
I'm not that one. I'm one.
I have it, but I need a seconder. I thought Lorraine was the second.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So that's, sorry, Jay and Lorraine.
Yes.
I just need the wording. Nikki, you said
I'm bringing it right
so
to you.
7.4 is the last bylaw, and then we have 8.1.
No, 7.5.
No,
7.5. Yeah, that's the comprehensive zoning bylaw. And that one is with Nikki, Councillor Dwyer.
I'll do that.
And let's just be clear, you want me to summarize where, like you want me to summarize a motion to amend on the fly?
So the bylaws coming forward, there's, because this is a special council, we just need to confirm the amendments to that were brought forward in the report tonight, that they will be captured in the bylaw that's being passed and read tonight. And
Surrounding ARUs, that's the only thing we agreed to change.
the ARUs, and then the change to the mapping that Nadia explained at the beginning of the meeting. Do you remember she reviewed them? Okay, just the amendments as included. I mean, the bylaw hadn't came forward yet. It was just the recommendation to committee, and there was further explanation there.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I can do that.
And Sean, I'm just bringing this to you right now.
8.1 is who? Anybody know?
It was Lorraine.
8.1 is
Oh,
Lorraine.
oh, I'm 8-1. Yeah, that's true. Yes. And Peter.
And Lorraine, your secondary source, Peter.
Peter, yeah.
And then, whoops, just a moment. Okay, that's weird. Nice. Okay, and then 8.2. Who was 8.2?
I don't have an 8.2.
There's no 8.2.
County-wide early learning and childcare.
It was Confederation Bridge, Sean. It's gone.
No, here it's.
That's the old agenda. That's old news.
Yeah, so you'll see number 8.2, we're not moving forward because that wasn't supported, or that didn't.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
so
I
that
get,
was just. Yeah.
okay, I get two different agendas here, but I'll go back. So 7.1 is digital. Oh, that's why, sorry, the first one was August 2nd, not August 22nd. Oh, that's why I'm confused. That would have really been.
There we go. That's why it wasn't working.
Okay, so Chris has 7.1 with Nikki as the seconder. And 7.2 is Lorraine with Peter. And 7.3, Peter and Jay.
No, me and Jay, I think, wasn't it?
No, it's Peter and Chris or Jay. I don't care which one.
I think it was Jay.
It's the asset
My bad,
management.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And sorry, 7.4 is Jay and Lorraine.
Yep.
And 7.5 is Nikki with Jay.
Yep.
And 8.1 food cycler.
Counselor Allen,
Lorraine and Peter.
and then Counselor Dwyer has the adjournment.
Counselor Dwyer, and seconded by, who wants to adjourn? Jay, Jay's volunteering. Okay.
Do that now.
Rid of that.
Okay. Wait, Mayor Pinko, so if you're ready,
Well, I guess we are still rolling along here.
yeah, it appears we are still rolling along, so we can go ahead and start council.
Okay, thanks everyone for your patience while we organize ourselves for the council meeting here with the movers and seconders. I will open the council meeting with our land acknowledgement. On August 22nd, 2022, we acknowledge that the sacred land in which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might be here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. I'll call this meeting to order. I have no announcements myself today. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I see none. We have no delegations. We have no adoption of minutes. I assume we have no reports. Correct? Okay. Move right into our bylaws. Our first bylaw is with Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with GHD Digital Solutions respecting the Newtown website be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with GHD Digital Solutions respecting the Newtown website be received, read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor McGuire?
Thanks. So after considerable issues with our former website, especially with backend security updates, we're going to a new provider. The new provider is doing hosting and content management service in-house. So there's a bit of a risk there, but they have contracts with several municipalities across the country. So our risk is well hedged. It's exciting to get this moving, and it'll be integrated with our e-meeting software. So hopefully it'll create a better user experience for residents as the website becomes our first point of contact for the town more and more these days. So exciting development.
Nice. Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with GHD Digital Solutions respecting the Newtown website be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10371-2022.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with GHD Digital Solutions respecting the Newtown website be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10371-2022. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And Councillor Allen, you have item 8.2.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with Dominic Laporte respecting the Russell Street Artscape Parquet Mural Project be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by Councillor McKenna that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with Dominic Laporte respecting the Russell Street Artscape Parquet Mural Project be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Allen.
Yes, this was an interesting procedure. There were a number of selections for this mural, and it was put on Speak Up Smiths Falls, and they had a really good return of people deciding which one it was and giving their reason and so forth. And it was decided that Dominic Laporte was also a good price and the best choice in that particular thing chosen by the citizens. And so the only changes that we suggested is there are 2 trains. We're going to take the boxcars off, and there's a water tower in the mural. And instead of having, I think it has the last logo on it, but we're going to update it to the one we have now. And look forward to seeing this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with Dominic Laporte respecting the Russell Street Artscape Parquet Mural Project be now read third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10372-2022.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor McKenna that a bylaw to authorize execution of a service agreement with Dominic Laporte respecting the Russell Street Artscape Parquet Mural Project be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10372-2022. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor McKenna, you were up next.
Yes, this is a bylaw to adopt the 2022 Core Infrastructure Asset Management Plan. And it's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that a bylaw to adopt the 2022 Core Infrastructure Asset Management Plan be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor McGuire that a bylaw to adopt the 2022 Core Infrastructure Asset Management Plan be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor McKenna.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The province wisely required municipalities to look at their assets. So this would include, in this case, it's the core assets. So it's stormwater, roads, bridges, wastewater, etc. Our other assets like arenas and town hall are separate from this particular plan. So the province requires all municipalities in Ontario to develop a plan to say, what condition is your road, bridges, etc. in? When will it reach the end of its life cycle? And what would it cost to replace that and to maintain it over the life cycle? So the staff have worked hard with a consulting group to determine that I think there's over 60 kilometers of roads and the water mains. They've identified all these things, and using a fairly objective process, they look at the condition of the pavement, they look at the condition of the bridges, etc., and they determine which particular core assets need funding in the short term, medium term, and long term. The province has required this, and I believe in order to get any grants from the upper tier of the federal provincial government, you must have this asset management plan in place. And so I'm really pleased to bring this forward to council tonight for consideration, and happy to hopefully the public will find it as riveting as we do around this table.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Yes, it moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that a bylaw to adopt the 2022 Core Infrastructure Asset Management Plan be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10373-2022.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor McGuire. The bylaw to adopt the 2022 core infrastructure asset management plan be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10373-2022. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Brennan, you have the next bylaw.
I do, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw to lift the holding zone respecting the property known municipally as 188 Chambers Street be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Brennan and seconded by Councillor Allen that a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw to lift the holding zone respecting the property known municipally as 188 Chambers Street be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
As discussed a little while ago, this particular property was an industrial property, and council had deemed it to rezone it as residential in the view of creating 5 new residential units that will be affordable, administered by the County of Lanark. There was a holding zone placed on it to meet certain conditions. Those have been met. And now we're really happy to approve this finally and get the building started and create 5 new affordable units in Smith Falls.
Super. Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw to lift the holding zone respecting the property known municipally as 188 Chambers Street be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10374-2022.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Brennan and seconded by Councillor Allen that a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw to lift the holding zone respecting the property known municipally as 188 Chambers Street be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10374-2022. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Our final bylaw is with Councillor Dwyer, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to adopt the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Smith Falls be received and read a first time and taken and read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Dwyer and seconded by Councillor Brennan that a bylaw to adopt a comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Smith Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you, Mayor Pankow. This item was subject to discussions earlier tonight, and during the discussions at Committee of the Whole, we were advised by our consultants who prepared our comprehensive zoning bylaw that there are some slight changes to the mapping schedules that will be consolidated following final review and public comment into this bylaw. And council also discussed and gave direction on amendments to the provisions for ARUs or accessory residential units to create some flexibility in yard provisions to make it as easy as possible for the ARUs to be established in rear yards. So pending those final changes, we will have a brand new comprehensive zoning bylaw. There is public appeal periods, of which Carl will be circulating notice about, but all that to say, this concludes our very substantial review process on replacing the existing comprehensive review bylaw, which I believe was adopted in 1994. So it's about time, and we're very happy to have it come forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Mayor Pankow. I really appreciate the changes to the additional residential units, but I don't agree with the adult entertainment use being designated on the corridor commercial sections. So I'm not going to support it at this time. I think having to go through the minor variance process if a business like that is looking to open is a good conversation that the town should have. And those corridor commercial areas are first impression areas for a town where people coming into town, it's a lot of the first things they'll see are those businesses. So for that reason, I'm not going to support this tonight.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, Councillor Dwyer, replacing a bylaw that is 28 years old. Third reading, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to adopt comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Smiths Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10375-2022.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Dwyer and seconded by Councillor Brennan that a bylaw to adopt a comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Smiths Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10375-2022. All in favor? And opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, one more piece of business with Councillor Allen, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls directs staff to investigate a tailored food waste reduction program with food cycle science on a larger scale as presented in Committee of the Whole Report 2022-120.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Allen.
Yes, there were 100 households that participated in this, and they, for a number of months, March till May, and when they were finished, they did a survey to show how they felt this machine worked. And Larry and I were lucky enough to have one ourselves, and it's transformed us. We had a beautiful compost pit that was working slowly, very slowly. But when we bought this, it just transformed, having your compost just immediately turned into something you can put in your garden all in one day was really awesome. And so there is an interest and intention to expand the program, and we're going to develop a recommendation to do that as a whole community moving forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, it's moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by Councillor McKenna. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls directs staff to investigate a tailored food waste reduction program with food cycle science on a larger scale as presented in Committee of the Whole Report 2022-120. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Any inquiries or announcements before we wrap up? No. Adjournment, Councillor McGuire, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. I just lost my agenda, so hopefully I can do this correctly. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls adjourn its proceedings this evening at 8:21 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
You got it. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Brennan. This council adjourns proceedings at 8:21 p.m. Stands